to more of it. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
Darnold balls out, picked up by Verse, off to the races, and gone for the touchdown. 4th down and 2. Darnold is sacked again. Rams take over. Kobe Turner. What a night for Chris Shula's defense. Sam Darnold and Kevin O'Connell look shell-shocked.
Everything that could go wrong for Minnesota has.
That's what it sounded like last night on ESPN as an absolutely dominant performance finishes out Wild Card Weekend. Rams win 27-9. You also heard that right here on 101 ESPN with Alex Ferrario and Bradford Bruns. I'm Brandon Kiley. T-Bone out today and tomorrow. He'll be back in with us on Thursday. Alex, I thought the Rams would win that game. That was my selection for last night's Monday night game. I did not think it would look like that, though. I didn't think Sam Darnold would pee down his leg in consecutive weeks to fumble the bag. And that's exactly what happened last night. Yes, I will give full credit where it is due, which is that the Rams played one hell of a game last night. I will also criticize where it is justified. The Vikings fell apart. I don't know what happened over the last couple of weeks to Sam Darnold. I don't think it was a complete fluke that he was one of the, top 10 quarterbacks based on performance for the first 16 weeks of the season. That doesn't just happen out of thin air. He performed. He deserved all of the accolades and all of the credit for that. I don't know what changed over the last couple of weeks, but he reverted back to the Sam Darnold that we saw with the Jets. It was this exact same stuff. He was seeing ghosts in the pocket. He was having a guy that was briefly open where he was previously just hitting him in stride, ready to go. And over the last couple of weeks, he was waiting that extra beat. And by the time he was ready to throw it, the guy became covered again, or he just missed him entirely. The number of misreads that you saw yesterday, and maybe more alarming, the number of throws that just had no chance of being completed. The wide receiver was open, and he just airmails it, either just to a dead space or to an open defender. It was crazy to watch. It was jarring to watch. And that's what ultimately lost them the opportunity to compete last night. Alex, what'd you make of it? Because I think you can go with either side. You can credit the Rams. You can criticize the Vikings. Both are deserved. What did you make of last night's performance by those two teams?
I started with the criticism of the Vikings and really of Sam Darnold. And this was my concern. It's why I never really bought into the Minnesota Vikings this season. It's because when the games get big, when the moments get big, typically your quarterback takes it to the next level. And, we saw it against the Lions to wrap up the regular season. That was a massive game for Minnesota, to get the bye, to not have to worry about that first wild card stretch, to rest up and get prepared.
Some have said it was the biggest game in NFL history, and I know that sounds like throwing it way out of proportion. It's because of the stakes. We have never seen a game that late into the season where the number 1 seed is on the line, and there was only one bye this year, which also changes things. So you either got the bye, the number 1 seed, home field throughout, or you're going on the road in the first round, and you have to play against the Rams. So the stakes were as high as you could possibly ask for.
And what's the narrative of the Detroit Lions right now? They're injured. They don't have a good defense. Sam Darnold went 18 for 41 in that game against the Lions with 166 yards, and they scored 9 points. And I'm supposed to believe that guy in a wild card game on the road is going to be the next level that you need, is going to be the Josh Allen, the Joe Burrow, the Patrick Mahomes. I just couldn't buy into it. And I was vindicated with it. Watching him play, it's not just Sam Darnold. It was the offensive line, too. It's like they weren't expecting the Rams to rush them. But every single time they did, Sam Darnold panicked. And it was like, oh, shoot, what are they doing? What am I going to do? Where am I going to go with this? I think at one point, Troy Aikman made the statement on the broadcast, he's not analyzing the field properly. So that was my biggest takeaway. It's look, the Vikings, you picked up 14 wins this season, and it was a massive year for you. Sam Darnold, congrats to you. You had a great season. But you aren't the quarterback that takes the team to the next level when they need it the most. And that was the biggest flaw from that game last night.
I know this sounds kind of overreaction Monday type of stuff. They cannot bring him back next year. If they could bring him back on a normal deal, like a $12 to $15 million contract, similar to what he got this year, sure, yeah, fine. Go ahead and bring him back. That's not what it's going to be. Spot Rack put out their projections earlier today, Alex. They are projecting Sam Darnold to get a 4-year contract worth $160 million.
No way.
The alternative to that, if you want to get him a quote on the cheap, if you're the Vikings, is to give him a fully guaranteed 1-year contract. Like, I think it's $45 million for the franchise tag next year. I'm not doing either of those things. If I'm the Vikings, I'm allowing him to walk. You'll get a comp pick in return. It'll probably be a 3rd-round selection in the 2026 draft because you got him and he walks via free agency. And I run it back next year with J.J. McCarthy. The lesson from Sam Darnold, in my opinion, is when you have this kind of an infrastructure, a really good pass-catching core, including tight end T.J. Hawkinson, who looked great last night, by the way. You've got a decent running game. You could upgrade the offensive line, and you have a great play-calling head coach. You only need so much from your quarterback to get to this kind of a floor where you're good regular season, limited in the postseason. Well, Sam Darnold reached that floor for them. He showed you a little something this year. J.J. McCarthy, they took him in the 1st round for a reason. They believe this guy to be a good quarterback. He should be what Sam Darnold was this year, man. Mm-hmm. And if he's not, then you go back to the market and you find out what your next answer is. But the answer certainly is not paying Sam Darnold $40 million a season. That limits what you're able to do around him. What you saw this year would look like a mirage in the future because then you're not going to be able to bring back like Jordan Addison, for example, T.J. Hawkinson, these guys that were helpful for you. You're going to run out of money eventually. So they can't bring him back, and I don't think that they're going to.
No.
Like 2 weeks ago, this would have been a different conversation. Today, after seeing what you did over the last 2 weeks, you see the glass ceiling with Sam Darnold as your quarterback. Who do you think is going to be interested in him in that kind of money?
Well, I mean, if that kind of money, not a lot of teams. They're going to be hoping that you get him cheaper, which you're not going to be able to.
Pittsburgh?
But like Pittsburgh would be the one. But I don't think Pittsburgh's going to pay that type of money. And I wouldn't pay that type of money. I mean, the Jets, but I'm not going to pay that type of money, especially after this Aaron Rodgers debacle, and you had him already.
They're in a tough cap situation, too, because of the Rodgers thing.
Unfortunately for Sam Darnold, these last 2 games kind of screwed yourself over in terms of the contract.
Do you think Tennessee would do it?
Where are they drafted
Vegas?
at?
Vegas could do it.
I'm Vegas. I hope I hope the quarterback that I'm going to draft is going to be playing that. Where's Tennessee drafting?
They're number 1.
Oh, so yeah. No, so Vegas isn't in the top 3 then?
They're in top 5, I think. I think they're like...
Because Cleveland's the 2nd overall pick. Yeah, maybe Vegas, but like...
Vegas is 6th.
Yeah, so Vegas is probably going to be the better one unless you're going to draft a quarterback that you think can come in.
Man, to be honest, if I'm Tennessee, I'm not taking one of these quarterbacks number 1 overall. They're not worthy. I know that it's the most important position in sports, but you make some serious mistakes when you do it just out of necessity.
But the opposite of that is Sam Darnold?
I think I would rather do that if I'm Tennessee. I know that sounds crazy.
I can't throw $40 million at that, man.
Totally get it. It would have to depend on the structure. Like, I'm willing to do a 2-year guarantees type of a thing. I'm not going into that 3rd year with him, and it's going to look like more money maybe than it actually is. But, I mean, my alternative is over-selecting one of these guys and then not taking, like, Travis Hunter or one of the tackles that's potentially in this year's class or one of the defensive ends. Like, there's really good players that I think can help the Tennessee Titans, and they need a lot right now on that roster. I don't think I'm reaching for one of the quarterbacks.
Here's my thing with...
Saints can't do it either. It's a limited market for him, man.
Well, and here's the thing with Sam Darnold. And again, I think these last 2 games really screwed it for you because if I'm a team that is willing to bring in Sam Darnold, I'm doing it because I'm a quarterback away from competing, or I feel like that the quarterback can get me to the next level. If I just watched him do that against the Lions in a crucial game and then in the 1st round of a wild card playoff, there's no way I'm going to go throw money at that guy, especially if I'm Minnesota. If I'm Minnesota, I can't pay that. Like that handcuffs my team for the rest of that contract, and now I can't make any adjustments. And that means your quarterback has to be critical. If you're Sam Darnold, your market's going to thin, I believe, because of these last couple of games.
All right, next thing that I wanted to get to here is what last night meant for the divisional round. By the way, credit to the Rams. Matt Stafford looked really good last night. Kyren Williams continues to be a revelation. Puka Nacua, really good night for him as well. Rams looked like a real contender. However, I am starting to wonder how much of what we have seen from the Lions last week and the Rams this week was about the Vikings. It was a direct reflection of what the Vikings lack, more so than what those teams have figured out, especially on the defensive side of the football. For me, Alex, and I fell for the Vikings stuff 2 weeks ago. I did not fall for it this week. I had the Rams in that game last night. It makes me seriously consider, and I think I will, taking the Commanders against the Detroit Lions in the divisional round. I just don't believe in that defense, man. I think you saw last night, The Vikings are the ones that are shooting themselves in the foot every bit as much as what the Detroit Lions are doing defensively against them. And the Lions prior to that had been giving up yards to everybody they're going up against. They're just hurt on that side of the football. They had talent, and all of them are injured right now. So I think the Commanders have a really good shot to take down the Lions on the road this week. How else are you looking at this upcoming divisional round after what we saw in Wild Card Weekend?
I'm gonna keep taking the Lions in that game, but I don't. Did I see the spread was 9.5
in the divisional
for the
round?
Lions and Commanders? I thought I saw it was minus 9.5 Detroit.
It is at 10 now.
Okay.
It's gone all the way up to 10.
I'm going to take the Commanders plus the points because I think what this game between the Commanders and Lions is going to be was the Bills and Lions game from a few weeks ago. But I think the outcome is going to be the Lions because to me, it's experience versus inexperience. And I'll take Dan Campbell and Jared Goff over Jaden Daniels and Dan Quinn any day of the week.
4-1 on the money line
I know.
you can get right now if you're betting on the Commanders.
I mean,
I love that bet. I'm sorry. That's a bet I will be making this weekend. I'm going to text T-Bone.
It's going to be the best game it's going to be one of the best games because I keep forgetting that you've got Bills and Lamar Jackson and you've got Chiefs and C.J. Stroud. But, this is what we really wanted in the playoffs over the wild card round. But, man, I'm not going to take away the Lions. Yes, it does feel like a little bit of fool me with that game against the Vikings where the Lions are able to just completely shut them down because the Vikings are frauds. But I still think that Lions offense is going to be able to put up points, and that's what that game is going to come down to.
I do agree with that. I think that's going to be a really high-scoring game. Like I told you in the room earlier today as we were getting ready for the show, if that over-under was set at 70,
I would take the over.
I would still consider taking the over. It's at 55.5.
Oh.
I'm guessing that the Chiefs-Bills game from a few years ago, the 13 seconds game, I'm guessing that line or that total was pretty similar. I'll have to look this up during the break and we'll find out. I have to imagine this is one of the highest totals that we've seen in a playoff game in recent memory. That's insane. 55.5 for a playoff game is crazy. But what we have set up, Saturday afternoon, it's Texans at the Chiefs, 7.5 point line in favor of Kansas City in that one. That feels about right to me. Commanders at the Lions Saturday night. Lions are a 10-point favorite. We both agree, Alex. That's way too many points in favor of the Lions. And then on Sunday, afternoon game is the Rams at the Eagles. Eagles are a 6-point favorite in that one. I think that's going to be an ugly game. Yep. And Vegas agrees. Their point total on that is 43.5. So they think it's going to be very low scoring. Their projected score is 26-17 or 24-17, something like that. And then the Ravens at the Bills is the final game of the weekend, and that's the one that everybody's looking forward to.
Yeah.
That game, the line has flipped. It started out as the Bills -1.5. It is now the Ravens favored on the road at the Bills. I looked this up last night. The last time that the Bills were an underdog at home in a non-Week 18 game, because they were an underdog at home when Barkley started a game for them. That's a little different. When they have Josh Allen starting, home game, they have not been an underdog at home since 2020. It's been 5 years since the last time that this had happened for the Bills. So Ravens are officially favored on the road at Buffalo.
I don't like that for Baltimore. I would be taking Buffalo in that.
That's a tough one,
Baltimore needs the underdog mentality, man. Baltimore can't go in there with their chest pumped out saying we're the best team coming into this one. That's when Lamar typically chokes.
Yeah, that's the game I have the least feel for right now.
Oh, see, mine's the Eagles-Rams one. It's going to be ugly, but I don't have a feel of who's winning that game.
I like the Rams plus the points because I think it's going to be low scoring, but I think that the Eagles win. My current projected winners as of today, subject to change, but I think it'll be this. Chiefs, Commanders, Eagles, and I'll go with the Bills. I'm leaking confidence on that one, but those would be my 4 winners as of today.
Mine's Chiefs, Bills, Lions, Rams.
You got the Rams over the Eagles.
Mm-hmm. I think the offense is going to outplay Philadelphia's offense. Philly's going to try and play boring, and I don't know if the Rams are going to be able to do that.
He's Alex Ferrario. That is Bradford Bruns, and I'm Brandon Kiley. You've got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. In about 15 minutes, we're going to talk to Jeremy Rutherford ahead of tonight's Blues game, a huge one for St. Louis. They've got the Flames tonight and the Flames on Thursday. Back-to-back games against the team that is currently in the final wild card spot in the Western Conference. The Blues are trying to chase them down. It feels like 2 legit must-win games. That is an overused phrase in hockey, especially at this point in the season. I don't think it is overemphasizing these particular games, though. We'll get into that with JR coming up at 11:30. But coming up next, Alex, the Cowboys are ready to get back into the circus. They entered their hat into the ring just the other day when they decided to part ways with Mike McCarthy. There were a bunch of updates on this job yesterday. We got to talk about this. Coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
How about them Cowboys? Start your day with the morning after on 101 ESPN. Get in the know first on everything St. Louis sports with Tim McKernan, Doug Vaughn, and Martin Kilcoy. Listen to TMA weekday mornings from 7 to 11 a.m. on 101 ESPN. The morning after is presented by Brown and Crouppen Law Firm.
ESPN is your home for Blues hockey. Check out either the 101 mobile app or 101ESPN.com for your chance to win a signed puck autographed by Blues captain Braden Shen.
Shen shoots, he scores! Game winner! Bring out the Zamboni!
Get entered to win that Braden Shen signed puck right now, either at 101ESPN.com or on your 101 mobile app. Powered by Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers.
This is exactly where you want to be listening to us. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
As far as a coveted job, I don't know that that's accurate. I mean,
Really?
I do think the Cowboys are obviously a high-profile team. Whoever is covering or whoever is head coach of that team is certainly going to draw a lot of attention. But I think most football people that take over as a head coach, they want to do it on their terms.
That's fair.
That's hard to do. And it's, if you take a Dan Campbell, for instance, is Dan Campbell if he's with the Dallas Cowboys? It's hard to imagine that he is. It's hard to imagine that a lot of these coaches might be. I love the Dallas Cowboys. I played there for 12 years. I wish them well. But to say that it's a coveted job, I'm not sure I would necessarily agree with that.
That was Troy Aikman on ESPN last night, the pregame show, talking about the Cowboys job, how coveted it is across the league. I think he's right, Alex. I don't think this is a job that people are just falling over themselves to get. I think there's a lot of coaches that have very few options in the NFL that would love to have the Dallas Cowboys job. And that means a guy like Pete Carroll, who would love nothing more than to be a head coach once again in the NFL. Hey, man, beggars can't be choosers. And if you get that opportunity, that's the one you got to go ahead and take. If you're Kellen Moore, who has the ties to the Dallas Cowboys, he's been tied once again to this job. Yeah, you got to take it. If you're Jason Witten, who's coaching in high school right now, he's won back-to-back state titles, so kudos to Jason Witten for that. But if he's offered the Dallas Cowboys head coaching job, of course he's going to say yes. And then there's one other, and this is the man that's been connected to a couple of different jobs. One in Las Vegas, the other is this one. Deion Sanders just can't help himself from potentially getting into the mix from this Dallas Cowboys head coaching position.
Clearly, Deion Sanders is somebody that Jerry Jones knows. There's great respect and admiration between the two men, and we'll see if those talks materialize into anything further.
Alex, I am obsessed with this job right now. It is something that I just can't help myself. It's catnip for me, right?
Calm down over there. It's the Cowboys.
Deion has been connected to the job. He played for them from 95 to 2000 or to 99. Kellen Moore has been connected to this job. He played for them for 4 years and then coached for them for 5 years. Jason Witten connected to the job. He played for the Cowboys for nearly 20 years. Any common theme there, boys? It's very clear a tie to Jerry Jones is almost a prerequisite for this job. Now, there are other candidates that have been mentioned here. I've been scouring the internet, whether it's the athletics beat writer for the Dallas Cowboys or the Dallas Morning News. John Gruden has been tied to this job. Geez. Pete Carroll has been tied to it. Cliff Kingsbury's name has been mentioned. Surprisingly, the next two names were mentioned as well. Doug Peterson and Lane Kiffin were mentioned as possibilities. And then Ron Rivera, Brian Flores, Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn, the guys that have been connected to seemingly every job that's available this offseason, also mentioned. Oof. Alex, I don't think any of those last four are getting hired for this job. I think whoever gets hired to the Dallas Cowboys head coaching position is going to be one of those that we all gasp the moment that it is officially announced. I don't think it's going to be Deion. I think Jason Witten has a real chance here. I think if I had to pick my top two candidates for this job right now, I would say Jason Witten 1, Kellen Moore 2. And I don't say that because I think that's the right decision, but that feels very much like what Jerry Jones wants to do.
Yeah, I saw on the Deion Sanders side, I said this yesterday, and Louis Riddick said it today on Get Up. Like, Deion is an alpha, and an alpha is not going to go to Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys. That is a match made in hell.
Man, I could not disagree with it more.
Yeah.
I agree with your premise that Deion is an alpha. Sure. You know what Deion would love to do? Go coach the Dallas Cowboys. Yeah. He wants to be in the NFL. I think that much is becoming increasingly clear. These rumors are not coming out of thin air. He was connected to the Vegas job, and then it came out, no, Vegas not interested. And now he's connected to the Dallas Cowboys job. Now, why is that? Deion Sanders himself released a statement about how he's intrigued by the job in Dallas. Why would he do that other than to promote himself to potentially get that job? Now that his sons are no longer at Colorado, he has nothing connecting him to that job anymore.
Yeah. I think when you're that type of personality and with a Dallas Cowboys job, you put your name into that conversation because it is the Dallas freaking Cowboys. But I'm not saying it's not possible and it's not happening. I'm just saying it will be a disaster when you've got Deion. When you got Deion, who is the ultimate alpha, who things have to be done his way. He calls himself Coach Prime, for God's sake. And then you've got Jerry Jones, who is also the ultimate alpha. I don't see that working out very well. I think this is Jason Witten or Kellen Moore. I think those are your two conversations, and all of these other names are being put in there because it's the Dallas Cowboys, and they're trying to make it look like the sexy job, and Dallas is going to call everybody. But what is going to make the most sense for Jerry Jones? I get a coach who's got either some experience or little experience, but I got a coach who has the inability to push back. Because guess what? I get to manipulate this roster. This is my team. I'm Jerry Jones. And when I have Jason Witten, who, awesome, you're winning high school football as a coach. But you come to the Dallas Cowboys, you're in my world now, Jason. This is my team, but you get to be the coach, and we get to work this. I get to be your puppet master. Kellen Moore's got a little bit more gravitas to push back, But I still think anytime Kellen Moore tries to push back, it's the Dallas freaking Cowboys, and I'm the head coach of it. That's where this lane ends, in my opinion. It's two guys that come in, and Jerry Jones gets to still work that ventriloquist doll.
See, I think the infusion of that alpha mentality is exactly what the Cowboys need and what the fan base so desires. But to use your words, BK, when was the last time that Jerry Jones, that this organization actually hired a name, brought a new name in that made you gasp? Yeah, all the way back in 2006. What has been the common thread since then? Alex, as you said, somebody, yes, with ties to the club, but somebody you feel as if you still have that ultimate control over. That's why I'm skeptical here, because we're going on nearly 20 years since that last splash was actually made. Sooner or later, though, are you going to make one more?
Yeah, I don't think they're going to hire Dion. I think this is all just kind of talk. And I think the hope is, because I think most people feel the way that we do about this, if they hire Dion, it would end in disaster. It would not go well. I think the reason that if you're the Cowboys, you leak that name and you want that out there, it's because it softens the blow if it ends up being Kellen Moore. Yeah. It softens the blow a little bit if it ends up being Jason Witten. Because, yeah, Dion he's a lot, right? And I will give credit to Dion for what he's done in college. I didn't know that it was going to work as well as it has at Colorado. He had success at Jackson State. He clearly, something about the way that he coaches college kids works. Whether I agree or disagree with it doesn't matter. Something about it works, and it clearly worked this year for them to the point where one of his players won the Heisman this year. Man, credit where it's due. So it's working for him there. I don't know if it would work in the NFL, and I think it would end in disaster in that specific situation. Kellen Moore is a respected coach in the NFL. I don't think that's the best hire that you could make if you're the Dallas Cowboys, but I get it. Jason Witten would be crazy, man. That's like when
that's Jeff Saturday.
Dude, yes. Yep. It's like when the Colts hired Jeff Saturday. We know this guy. We've seen him on television. Now, Jeff Saturday's decent on TV. Jason Witten was a complete disaster on television.
That went well.
Why do you say that, man?
Dude, he got fired after a season and a half, and they had Booger McFarland on this Booger mobile going down the sidelines because they knew they couldn't have Jason Witten talking the entire game.
Bradford, never, for ESPN. Never trust a Booger McFeel.
I hear you.
So I think that's the direction that they end up going, and I think Dion's out there to make it feel a little better.
That's why all these other names are in there. That's when Dion's in there, and Ben Johnson's name's out there, like
Lane Kiffin.
Gruden. Really? We're back to this?
Yeah.
Doug Peterson. After what you just saw with Jacksonville, Doug Peterson.
They live in a different world than Dallas, man.
Again.
All right. Last thing that I wanted to get to, as we talk about coaches across the league. Last night, for me at least, it was a reminder. Sean McVay is clearly the second best coach in the NFL. Mm-hmm. I think Andy Reid is clearly and definitively, post-Belichick, number one in the league. I think Sean McVay is clearly, to me, the second best coach in the league. I thought there would be a case this year. Some people would say Kevin O'Connell, maybe the third best coach in the NFL right now. I get it. What he did with Sam Darnold, nothing short of remarkable. He's had a ton of success there now with multiple quarterbacks. He seems to get the most out of his offenses. Play calling head coach, I get it. You want to make a case for LaFleur. Did it with Rodgers, has done it now with Jordan Love. I get that. You want to go with one of the Harbaugh brothers. I get that. Who would you guys have as the third best coach in the NFL today? Because I think 1-2 is clear. Mm-hmm. And then I think it gets pretty muddy, pretty murky on who you think that number 3 guy is.
Man, I'm toss. It's a toss-up between Dan Campbell and Sean McDermott, and I think I will give the edge to Sean McDermott. Mm-hmm. Mostly because we thought that this Buffalo Bills team was going to be a 7 or 8 win team when they lost Stephon Diggs. And we were like, what's this team going to look like? It's going to have to be all Josh Allen. And Sean McDermott has found a way to make that team one of the best teams in the AFC. Like Dan Campbell, I could get the argument for because Jared Goff has been their quarterback since they were a 3-win team. And now they're the best team in the NFC despite all of these injuries. I would give the slight edge to Sean McDermott, but it's like a tie for third place.
Yeah, for me, the Harbaugh brothers are up there. Certainly, McDermott makes his case. I want to see the breakthrough from Buffalo in the AFC title game this year to solidify that. Even next year, depending on what happens in Denver, year number 3 under Sean Payton, I'd throw him into that conversation. But BK, to me, the most striking thing that you said, the clear gap here, that chasm between the top 2 and everybody else, because we can probably lump guys.
I think there's a clear 3.
Yeah, I mean, you think there's a clear 3 because I think we could put 8 different guys into that same stew, but yeah.
I think it's Kyle Shanahan. I think he's hiding in plain sight. I think they had a year from hell this year, and they had injuries like crazy, and this has happened a couple of times now under Shanahan, which kind of, in those seasons, throws us off the scent. Dude, he's been to multiple Super Bowls with Jimmy Garoppolo and Brock Purdy as his quarterbacks. And he has built the 49ers up until this season into a consistent threat, not just in the NFC West, but to get to the Super Bowl annually. We did the question yesterday, Alex, of which team has been the best in the NFC over the last 5 years. It's hard to say that the answer is the 49ers because they haven't won one the way that the Bucs and the Rams have. And they do have these down years where it seems like everybody gets hurt on the roster. But man, they've, in their peak years, been the best. You could make a pretty strong argument for them. So I think it's still Kyle Shanahan to me, kind of similar to what it is with Sean McVay in LA. I think those guys are 2-3, and then I will have the conversation about everybody else. But for me, I would still have Shanahan as that third. Like, if every coach in the NFL was available, and you could start your team with him, and you don't know what your roster looks like, I'm picking Andy Reid 1, I'm picking Sean McVay 2, although for longevity, I could understand if you flipped those things. Shanahan's my third pick.
Yeah.
I get the Dan Campbell selection. I get Harbaugh's. I would personally go with Kyle Shanahan. He's Alex's
Hey,
Bradford.
T-Bone.
I'm VK. Coming up in about 15 minutes, we'll get to your questions for today. 314-399-9646. That is the Air Comfort Service text line. You guys can always check us out on YouTube as well at youtube.com/101ESPN STL. Coming up next, we are talking about the St. Louis Blues with Jeremy Rutherford ahead of two arguably must-win games against the Calgary Flames. What is he looking for in these ones? We'll ask JR next here on 101 ESPN.
Tune in this Friday from 11 to 2 as BK and Ferrario broadcast live from the E&B Granite Studios at the Centene Community Ice Center. E&B Granite, Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring. You can now watch 101 ESPN live on our Air Alliance Team Studio Cams. Catch every show live on our YouTube channel or at 101ESPN.com. 101 ESPN Studio Cams.
Presented by the Air Alliance Team Heating and Cooling. Getting the job done quickly, correctly, 100% of the time.
101 ESPN Sports Center.
Blues try to cool off flames. Good morning. I'm Bradford Bruns. Your Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Fresh off defeating Chicago last night, 5-2. Calgary arrives downtown shortly. St. Louis continuing its homestand at 7 o'clock on 101 ESPN. Saturday, the note dropped a 2-1 verdict against Columbus. Ryan Huska's team, meanwhile, has won 3 straight. NFL, Sean McVay's Rams wrap up wildcard action by demolishing Minnesota 27-9. LA will face Philadelphia this weekend. The Sports Center update was driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
They are St. Louis. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
Let's go out to the Callier and Thompson hotline to be joined by our friend, the Blues insider for The Athletic. He's Jeremy Rutherford joining us on the show as he does each and every Tuesday with Alex and Bradford on BK. JR, appreciate the time as always, man. A little bit of interesting news coming out of the Blues skate today. Looks like Bolduc is going to be out along with Nathan Walker, and they're going with Matthew Joseph and Alexander Texier for those two guys. JR, what did Jim Montgomery have to say about making those changes to the lineup ahead of tonight's game?
He said 2 words, a spark. He's looking for a spark tonight. So Joseph and Texier will be in. Walker and Bolduc, as you mentioned, will be out. And specifically, he said he believes that Matthew Joseph can help with the penalty kill. 26th in the league. We know that's been a struggle for a lot of the season. And with Texier, he said that 3 or 4 points in the last 5 games he's played. So he hasn't played in all these games straight, but in the games he's been in, a few points, they think that he can come in and help. And with regard to Bolduc, people wondering maybe why Bolduc not in the lineup. He said that Montgomery said that he really wants Bolduc to kind of focus on the areas of the game that help the team in terms of the game management, the predictability, things like that. You know, spend some time working on those and make those as important to him as he does the line rushes, things like that create offense. So they want to see those parts of his game come around, and that's why they're taking him out tonight.
JR, does the stuff with Zach Bolduc remind you a little bit of what they did with Robert Thomas back in that 2018-2019 season, where they knew that the talent was there, but they just needed him to watch from up top a little bit to kind of gain a little bit more experience of how to manage a game?
Yeah, and quite honestly, it kind of sounds like the answer that we've gotten from coaches over the years with regard to a lot of young players. And, you know, certainly the offensively talented ones like the Robert Thomas, you know, you come in and people are excited about a first-round pick who can come in and create some offense. Same thing as Zach Bolduc. But it takes some time to refine those parts of the game. And listen, this isn't a situation where the Blues are waiting around for these players to produce and play the team game. They can't. Like, I'm sure we're going to talk about this week's schedule here in a minute, guys. And, you know, back-to-back games against Calgary, which is now 5 points ahead of you. They're coming in, having won 3 in a row. You got Utah this weekend, a team that's just a point behind you. These are important games, and there's veterans around the room. And I'm not saying that they're pointing to a Bolduc, but they certainly want Jim Montgomery to put the best lineup out there that's going to play that predictable game so they can come out with some wins this week.
Jerry, you mentioned the penalty kill as something that they have pinpointed as, okay, this is what Matthew Joseph is potentially going to be in there for. It's really fallen off, and it hasn't been good all season long, but over the last 10 or so games, I think it's like 65%, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe it's from your conversations around the team or what you have seen from being up in the press box. What has gone wrong for the Blues on the penalty kill lately?
Yeah, and you'll hear these comments. I just spoke with Toropchenko and Fox about that question, and you'll hear those comments in their totality in the pregame. I believe Alex will have them. I sent them along to Alex. But both of those guys said that, they feel like they're doing a lot of good things on the penalty kill, but then there's one breakdown that leads to the goal. And, I don't know if we can simplify it, quite like that because, we see several breakdowns or a lot of goals are scored, and it's not just one mistake that led to that goal against. But, I think in talking to Fox and Toropchenko, what they talked about were the clears. I think that the Blues want to be more aggressive. Jim Montgomery, Mike Weber, PK coach, are preaching more aggressiveness lately on the penalty kill. And so you can make, like they say, a lot of the plays right and get yourself in a position to clear the puck. And if they don't, then they get hemmed in and they've struggled in that area. So, just listening to the players, what they feel needs to happen is what Montgomery talked about again today is just be more aggressive on that PK unit.
And JR, on the power play side of things with special teams, we've heard Jim Montgomery talk about how, they kind of emphasized splitting up the units to try and get two different power plays that can work. And today I think we saw Robert Thomas with Sundqvist, Buchnevich, Parayko, and Fowler. At what point do you think they go back to just one big unit rather than splitting up the two?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think that's kind of age-old question, too, in terms of when the power play is struggling, go to that big unit and see if you can get something from it. I just think that even when they've tried that at times this year, it hasn't gotten the job done. So you look at the game against Columbus the other night, just 3 shots on goal on the power play, and you end up scoring, late in the game, but that's a 6-on-4 situation. So, power play gets credit for the goal, but not necessarily your traditional 5-on-4. So, Alex, I guess more specifically to answer your question, I just think that they're trying everything, and I'm sure at times we're going to see those guys put together. Jim Montgomery was not asked that specific question today, so I don't have a direct answer for you. But, we're more than halfway through the season, and they've been trying just about every combination possible, trying to get these groups going.
Jeremy Rutherford is our guest for just another few minutes here on 101 ESPN. You can read his great work over at The Athletic. You can also follow him on Twitter at JP Rutherford. If you go over to The Athletic, he's got a great piece that posted, I believe, yesterday on the Montgomery effect, talking about how the Blues have improved. He did this with Dom, Alex. So Dom even can recognize.
When we get to this.
That Monty was somebody that has really, improved in almost every facet what the Blues have been able to do. And yet, JR, the results have still been touch and goal. The underlying numbers all suggest, hey, this is a much better team. They're playing better at 5-on-5, and that's more sustainable over the long haul. So, you should trust what they're doing now much more than you trusted what happened at the end of last year and earlier this season under Drew Bannister. Here's my question for you, JR.
Yep.
If the Blues lose the next 2 games, both against the Calgary Flames, a team that is directly competing with them for that last spot in the wild card, is that going to be the moment where the Blues have to admit, hey, this probably isn't going to happen for us this year, or is it different to you? Or are these not true must-win games?
I think if you lose these 2 games, you have to look at it that way. Now, are they going to be buried in the standings? No. Can you come back from 6 or 8 or 9 points down with what they have left in the season? Yes, it's possible. But I think if you lose these 2 games, and then again, that Utah game this weekend's a big one too, I think you have to view it that this is not a playoff team if you don't think that already. And so I think there is a huge importance on this. The players you talked to today, obviously they said that they're going to focus on themselves. But, this is a good Calgary team playing well lately that's coming in tonight, 5-2 over Chicago. Last night, it's Chicago, but they had a win in L.A. In that mix and beat a bad Anaheim team that the Blues just saw. So playing pretty good hockey. And, if you can somehow stop that in its tracks and put together 2 wins here, and maybe you win 2 out of the 3 the rest of this week, I think you can feel okay about yourself. Still not great. But if you lose them, this is certainly going to be a damper on the season and probably ignites those conversations about the Blues selling or trying to be cautiously sellers at the deadline.
Hey, Jared, final one from me, and we've seen Brandon Saad play on that top line with Thomas and Buchnevich for a little bit of an extended run, and now they're going back to Jake Neighbors. Is that the missing piece for this team right now, that top line winger to play with Thomas and Buch?
Yeah, and they just need somebody hot, right? Like they just need somebody that is going to kind of go on a run and make teammates, the line mates better. Dylan Holloway has done that with that second line. Holloway, Shen, and Kyrou have been really good the past couple of weeks since they got put together. And they need that on that top line. And I don't believe that it's Brandon Saad. He had some good games in there. But Jake Neighbors, according to Jim Montgomery today, and probably the eye test too, has put together 3, 4, 5 games here lately that they feel like he's trending upward. And Monty said today, it's all about production. You can talk about a player looks better, but you got to produce. They want to put Jake Neighbors in a spot where they think he can produce with the way he's playing right now.
He's Jeremy Rutherford. Appreciate his time as always. He joins us every Tuesday here on BK and Ferrario. JR, all the best, man. Enjoy the next few games. Calgary twice, Utah once. Big games for the Blues here to determine where they're going to stack up in the Western Conference playoff race. We'll talk with you again next week to break it all down, my friend.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And I got to tell you guys that Dom wrote about 70% of that story that was super positive about the Blues. And a couple of the commenters said, I don't need to read anything written by Dom. And he said, I can't even win. He called me and he said, I can't even win when I write something positive.
My question, though, JR, is did his fingers just burn off when he was typing positive things about Colton Parayko?
Yeah. No, and that was all him. That's the thing. Like, I contributed to the article, put some quotes in there, and kind of gave the eye test, but a lot of the analytics and some of the good feeling about what they're doing really came from him. So I just thought it was funny. His direct quote was, he said, boy, they can't let my evaluation of 2019 go, can they?
Yeah, look, JR, just tell Dom that it's going to be a lot more it's going to be harder to win over the St. Louis fan base than just one article trying to make amends.
I mean, it's pretty simple. His formula did not value what Jordan Binnington and Colton Parayko have done in recent seasons, and those are two of the guys that are, for a decent portion of this fan base, sacred cows. Like, you don't talk negative about them, and when he does, that's the way that it goes.
I get it. I'll pass it along. All right. Well, thanks, boys. Have a good rest of the day.
You're not going to pass it along. You liar.
JR. That's Jeremy Rutherford. Appreciate his time as always. Yeah. I'll pass that along.
He's not.
It's like when somebody emails in to us, Alex, and they're like, hey, tell your boss this about what you guys. Yeah, I'll pass that right along. I'll let Tommy Matter know.
What are you talking about? We always pass along messages from the great listeners.
All right. If you guys have any of those messages, specifically questions, you can get them in right now on the Air Comfort Service text line, 314-399-9646. That is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show, or YouTube at youtube.com/101 ESPN We'll get to questions and answers coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
Love TMA? Then nominate yourself to be the Morning After Listener of the Month. Sign up now at 101ESPN.com or TMASTL.com.
The TMA Listener of the Month Club is quenched by Milagro Tequila. Welcome to a brighter side of tequila with Milagro Tequila.
Call 800-948-7878. That's 800-948-7878. 800-948-7878.
Jamie Rivers back with you here with another jersey giveaway. This one is awesome. Jordan Kyrou signed jersey, the home blue, and it's a ladies cut. Nice, sleek, sharp. One you're going to love for your collection, and all you have to do is go to 101ESPN.com or visit 101ESPN, the mobile app. Register now to win that one-of-a-kind signed Jordan Kyrou female jersey.
Giving you the picture, the real big St. Louis sports picture. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. You've got questions, we may have the answers. Maybe. It's BK and Ferrario's questions and answers on 101 ESPN.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. You guys can get your questions in on YouTube as well at youtube.com/101ESPNSTL. We'll start over with the YouTube chat. This one comes from NY. What is your guys' expectation for Mizzou football next season? I know Bradford's a big Mizzou guy. He's got all of the Mizzou gear on today, so we'll certainly get his thoughts on this.
I thought you were an Illinois guy, Bradford.
I'll give you that idea.
No, that guy's busy celebrating the Rams' victory right now.
I thought you were a big Illinois guy.
I respect the program.
What Missouri has done with their transfer portal haul makes me believe that next year could be pretty similar to what you saw this year. If everything goes their way, could go like 10-2, find a way into the college football playoff. If things go wrong because of the schedule, like 8-4, something like that, I think they're somewhere in that type of a range. But it all comes down to Bo Pribula. How much do you believe in him? If he's really good, hey man, maybe I'm underselling what the ceiling is for this team. If he's not very good, well, maybe I'm underselling what the floor is. But I think they're probably somewhere in that range, 8-4 to 10-2. Probably most likely 9-3.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I think Pribula is going to be the difference on this one. I think you're a 9-win program. I think with the talent you've brought in, you're a 9-win program. And then what's the next step?
At least on paper, I love what they've done in the last couple of weeks as far as solidifying that secondary, because if you could nitpick a position group on the defensive side of the football this past season, it would be exactly that. Hardy seemingly a great get in the backfield, and the schedule, don't discount how favorable right now, as we sit here in January, it actually looks. You get 8 home dates, unprecedented number of home dates, and you're not playing many of those so-called heavyweights in the SEC. I definitely think 9-10 is possible.
All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. From the 314, are the Cardinals at 8-1 the best value pick to win their division in your mind? Let's see here. So the NL Central this year, the Cardinals are 9-1 actually now listed as the biggest long shot in the NL Central, believe it or not. The Pirates are also 9-1, Reds 5-1, Brewers plus 240. Cubs are the current favorite in the division at plus 110. I think that's a decent bet. 9-1 is pretty long odds. I don't think the Cardinals are going to win this division, but if you want to throw something down where you win decent money, I'd be fine with that. Yeah. I'm certainly not betting any, like, the Padres and Dodgers are overwhelming favorites to win the NL West this year. I think one of the Braves or the Phillies or the Mets should be overwhelming favorites to win the East this year. So I'm not betting on anybody else in those divisions. If you wanted to go with like the Rangers, I guess you could do that, but they're 2-1. So yeah, if you want to bet a long shot, I think the Cardinals are a fine one.
If you're going long shot, go for it. I would rather not throw my money into a trash can and light it on fire, because I think it's going to be nearly impossible for this team to win the NL Central if Nolan Arenado's here, because I think you're going to have a lot of days of our lives this season.
One of the other ones, Rays 7.5-1, just because they're the Rays. Go for it.
Yeah, I can see that one.
But like the Central Division, the Royals are 4th in terms of their odds to win the division. They're plus 320. The AL West, the Astros, Mariners, and Rangers are all within 2-1 odds to win the division. So there's no value on these teams to be able to win their divisions.
KC is 4th? Really? At present?
Yeah, but I mean they're all between 2-1 and 3-1.
Yeah.
So there's like no difference in what you're actually winning. So if you bet on the favorite, which is the Twins, at plus 210, bet $100, you win 210. Bet on the Royals, bet $100, you win 320, and that's putting your money into the market for 162 games. That's just, there's really no value there. I would just rather bet on individual games that you can potentially win. So If you want to bet long shot, go ahead. Bet on the Cardinals. From the 314, what's your opinion on Zach Bolduc at this point? The texter adds, I personally think he's been pretty good. Given the opportunity, he's been stuck on the third line all season, and I much prefer him to Brandon Saad. Alex, what's your read right now on Zach Bolduc?
I just think that they're not pleased with some of the decisions he makes in game. And it's just puck management. It's just understanding the timing of the game and what you do with it. They love everything about Zach Bolduc. Like, they believe that there's a 30-goal scorer in there. They believe that he's a two-way forward who can play physical. Like, everything about his game translates to the NHL. He's just young, and he's still figuring out what the do's and don'ts are in terms of on the ice in certain situations. And I don't think this has anything to do with Zach Bolduc's been playing well. I really think it's what Jim Montgomery said. They need a spark. Me personally, I probably would have taken Brandon Saad out and put Texier, but now you're putting two younger players on a third line that you need a third line to at least contribute at some point in this game. So they're just stuck right now with a lot of inexperienced guys that you can't throw all into the lineup at once if you're trying to win.
I like Zach Bolduc. I think Zach Bolduc is going to have a pretty good NHL career. I think he's young. I think he makes some of those mistakes that we've talked about, and I think it would have been for the best for his development if this team wasn't trying to make the playoffs this year. But they are. And so when you're in that scenario, it becomes more difficult to be able to live with some of the mistakes, especially in his own end, where you put the puck in some problematic scenarios. So it becomes difficult to go through both of those at the same time. I'm not sure how long he's going to be on the Blues. That's my current take on Zach Bolduc. And it's not because he's a bad player, but you get into a spot where you've got a roster crunch. And eventually, this is what the Cardinals are going to have to do. Some of the guys that you like that are on the Cardinals right now are probably going to have to be traded for other guys around the league. Package multiple players together and get one real dude that you love for the middle of your order, or get a star at the front end of your rotation. I think that's what the Blues are at. They've got a bunch of these prospects, a lot of whom projects to be middle six wingers. Well, you've got Holloway. He's going to be here for the long haul. You've got Jordan Kyrou. He's going to be here for the long haul. Jake Neighbors, I think, is going to be here for the long haul. How many of these guys can you keep? You know? So I do think eventually they're probably going to have to trade one or multiple of them in a package for a potential top line player. And I think Zach Bolduc is probably the one that makes the most sense to do that way.
Yeah, well, and that's why I asked JR that question, is that what's the missing piece right now? Because if it is, well, then that's what the goal of the offseason is going to be. Find that final piece for this team. And I think Zach Bolduc is going to be a 30-goal scorer in the National Hockey League, but I also think Dylan Holloway is going to be that. And if you've got Holloway and Bolduc, I think the Blues might look at this and say, yeah, but what else can we get?
And I want to be clear on this. This is not me disliking Zach Bolduc. It's the same thing that I was saying about Barbashev at the time. Eventually, you've got to be cold and calculated about these things, man. What is the best thing for my team? And for the St. Louis Blues right now, keep Zach Bolduc. There's nothing you can do with him. But at the deadline, if you're in it, like truly in it, yeah, you consider talking about him depending on what's available out there. You don't just throw him around willy-nilly. But if there's something big that you can get, don't be afraid.
Yeah.
And I don't think Doug Armstrong, of all people, is going to be afraid to make that kind of a big move.
Not at all.
And if you get to the offseason and the star tree, you shake it down and there's somebody that falls from it, yeah, he's not the guy that's going to prevent me from going out and making a big move if that's what it takes. So I think it's something that the Blues have to at least be open to. You don't just throw him around out there. But eventually, he's the type of guy that I do think could potentially be moved for a star. All right, he's Alex. That's Bradford. I'm BK. Coming up in 15 minutes, we'll dive into some NFL quick hitters. But next, if there was no free agency and there were no trades and you could only have your homegrown players and they had never gone anywhere else, where would the Cardinals rank in Major League Baseball? This was a premise that ESPN.com explored earlier today. We'll give you their rank coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
Join the Fast Lane and the Rizzuto Show at Hot Shots Fenton next Sunday, January 26th for Champ Bash. Hang with members of the shows and watch the AFC and NFC championship games. Enjoy bucket specials, delicious food, tons of giveaways, and the Pick'em Challenge punishment being served on site. Our Champ Bash kicks off with a live pregame broadcast, and the fun continues until the NFC and AFC champs are crowned. Don't miss this year's Champ Bash with the Fast Lane and the Rizzuto Show at Hot Shots Fenton. Get more details now at 101ESPN.com. KXOS, WXOS HD1 East St. Louis, 101 ESPN is driven by Brown and Crouppen Law Firm. We're right back to more of it. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
This premise from ESPN.com. They did a piece on if there were no free agency, no trades, every team only had the players that started within their organization. International free agency or guys that you had drafted and developed yourself. Where would each team across the league rank based on those rosters? With Alex and Bradford, I'm BK. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Alex, the number one team in the league, and this probably comes as no surprise, would be the Baltimore Orioles in this scenario. They have drafted and developed a ton of homegrown talent. And guys like Kevin Gossman, Eduardo Rodriguez started their career with Baltimore Orioles. Did you guys realize that Josh Hader and Tanner Scott both started their careers with the Baltimore Orioles as well?
Did not know Hader, did know Scott.
Christian Walker was there as well. Manny Machado would be technically a part of that lineup. Like, they've got a ton of talent in this scenario. Number two would be the Atlanta Braves. They would have Charlie Morton, Spencer Strider as part of their rotation, as they currently do. They would also, though, have Freddie Freeman still a part of that lineup. And then all of the guys that you know to be a part of it right now. William Contreras would be a part of it, too. So that's the top of this list. Where would you guess the Cardinals would rank in this scenario, Alex? No trades. They've still got all the guys they got rid of over the years, so that means Sandy Alcantara is here, Zach Gallen is here, Michael Wacha is here, Jack Flaherty is here. That's a big part of your rotation. Randy A., Adolis Garcia, they're a part of your lineup as well. Where do you think, according to this side at least, they would rank in Major League Baseball in that scenario?
I want to say middle of the pack, so I will say 12th.
Feels like a middle of the pack group to me as well, because I don't know about the lineup. So 16.
13th.
Oh, okay.
Would be sixth in the National League. Nice. 13th in Major League Baseball. In this scenario, they would project for about 81 wins, which is roughly 1.5 more than what they project in the actual scenario.
Wow.
And I find this interesting because when we talk about the Cardinals, a lot of the conversation resorts to, well, if they just didn't get rid of the guys that they ended up getting rid of, Sandy Alcantara, Randy Arozarena, Adolis Garcia, they'd be in a much better spot right now than what they currently have. And there's some truth to that, because in those scenarios, I think a lot of people are of the opinion, well, they would have those guys, and also they would have gone out and acquired Paul Goldschmidt when they did. They would have gone out and acquired Wilson Contreras when they did. And maybe that's all true. But I just found it interesting that they would still be roughly in the middle of the pack. I think they're higher in this scenario than they are currently. 13th instead of, 20th? Something like that in Major League Baseball. But I found that to be interesting. When I see a list like this, what it really tells me is the Cardinals might not be as bad at developing pitching as we think. They're just bad at picking the right guys, because Sandy Alcantara is better than anybody you have internally. Zach Gallen better than anybody that you have internally. Michael Wacha and Jack Flaherty had a bunch of injuries that derailed their careers here in St. Louis, but they're as good as anybody that you have internally, not named Sonny Gray right now. So they just picked poorly with the pitchers that they decided to keep versus the guys that they allowed to walk to free agency or traded away. What was your biggest takeaway, Alex, from seeing this?
Well, it's exactly what you just said. And I always go back to what Al Avila told us when we were talking with him. I think it was like a year ago, where he said, like, if you can't evaluate your own players, then you're going to have a rough year as an organization. And that's what this is. Like, you look at this pitching rotation, like Sandy Alcantara, Zach Gallen, Michael Wacha, Jack Flaherty, like, you had all the right dudes. The problem was you put them all together to go get something that you deemed necessary in terms of a bat in Marcell Ozuna. And it comes into, one, developing your own players, which we've already identified as it's difficult to develop a star, let alone a superstar in Major League Baseball. But if you can't evaluate the guys that are going to have success at Major League level and you trade them away for players that you think are going to be better and they don't pan out, well, then you're going to be in an endless cycle of just looking for more and more talent, and it's what I hope the Cardinals finally resolve. Like when you see Randy A., when you see Sandy Alcantara, when you see Zach Gallen, like those are the players that the Cardinals need to identify as, hey, these dudes are studs, and we need to keep them in our organization, not package them together and say, well, we got to go out and get the piece that we need right now. Because you drastically veer in one direction where it's like, oh, we got to trade these guys so we can go get what we need. And then you go the other direction, the ultimate route, and say, well, we can't trade any of our players because we don't want them to bite us. Like, you have a problem evaluating, and that's what that tells me.
Yeah, I think so too, but I also think sometimes we overemphasize how good the guys are that walk and underemphasize what the players are that have stayed. For example, I looked up what Lars Nootbaar, Randy Arozarena, and Adolis Garcia have done over the past 3 seasons. And if you look at it, one guy has a batting average over the last 3 years of 246. Another guy has a batting average over the last 3 years of 246. Another guy has a batting average over the last 3 years of 240. Which one was Lars Nootbaar? Can you guess? That's just batting average. I know it's a bad way to go about this. Okay, let's go OPS plus. OPS plus, one guy was at 116, another 117. The third is at 111. If you go by wins above replacement, they're all roughly around 7.5 over the last 3 years. They're the same guy. You look at the results that they've been able to put out there, and they have basically produced the exact same offense. And you could make a pretty strong argument that Lars and Adolis Garcia are the best two when it comes to what they're doing in the outfield defensively. And then base running, Newt is not the same base stealer as the other guys, but the other guys also take more risks on the base path, so they all kind of grade out pretty similarly. Offensively, they produce the same way. So my question to you, Alex, why do we view Lars Nootbaar as so underwhelming? I think that's the typical response that we get on the text line for him. While we view it as a failure that the Cardinals traded away Adolis Garcia, or let him walk, and traded away Randy Arozarena. Why are those guys considered to be failures for trading them away if Lars Nootbaar is also a disappointment for keeping? Shouldn't we view that? If you view those guys as being failures, right, you should also view Lars Nootbaar as a success for what he's developed into, because he's developed into basically those guys. Or it shouldn't be quite as big of a deal that you let those guys walk away because they're just Lars Nootbaar, so would that really change anything internally? That's kind of the way that I feel like it has to have some consistency there.
I think for me, it's two things. One, it's availability. The reason I think people are down on Lars Nootbaar is because he's never 100% available for you. There's always some type of injury that's going to keep him out for a month or two, and then you're always asking the what if. And then the only reason I think we're talking about Randy A. or Adolis Garcia is postseason success. That's what it comes down to. And if Lars Nootbaar, we've only seen him once in the playoffs, and it was 2 years ago, and frankly, that's not Lars's fault. That's the team's fault.
Absolutely.
But when you saw him, it was a short sample size, and he was fine. Randy A. was Babe Ruth for a couple of postseasons, and Adolis Garcia had a lot of power and success in the postseason when he played with the Texas Rangers. And that's what I think a lot of people are judging it off of. We don't know if Lars Nootbaar is going to be that type of player in the playoffs. And if he is, I think that silences the Randy A. and the Adolis Garcia conversations immediately. And frankly, we talked about this yesterday. Adolis Garcia is Nolan Gorman to me. Like, he's got all the power, but you're going to deal with the strikeouts, and I don't know how much. Really, the conversation is Randy A. And Randy A. is postseason success.
And really, it's confined to one postseason at that. Alex, I completely agree with you here. It is entirely dependent on the playoff success. These guys owned 2 separate Octobers in the early 2020s. You had a Arozarena, and really, for all intents and purposes, you're only talking about 2020, the 10 homers, the 14 ribbies, but he made his name nationally. And then in 2023, Garcia was fine the previous season, but going out there in the ALCS and the Fall Classic alone with the 8 homers and the 20-plus runs batted in, because they were able to do it on that stage, the grandest of all of them. That is exactly why we are looking at Nootbaar's production basically in a vacuum, because in the one lone postseason appearance he had, no, he wasn't even approaching those heights. The team wasn't, though, either.
The part with Adolis Garcia, like 2023, what do you have? 8 home runs? He had 20 hits and 18 strikeouts. So, like, it was awesome, but
You're talking about in the postseason?
In the postseason for 2023.
He was amazing.
No,
I can't take anything away from
I'm not discounting that, but like
talking about there.
He was a power bat for you, like a prototypical power bat. But that's what you're talking about. You're talking about postseason success versus the regular season with Lars Nootbaar.
Somebody on the text line, 314-399-9646. That's the Air Comfort Service text line. From the 425. Guys, Lars is just a guy. so far. That's all he is. Meanwhile, Garcia carried a team in the playoffs, and Arozarena captivated a nation for an entire postseason, nearing MVP status. I think that's fair, and you guys are totally correct. It all comes down to that postseason, those postseason accolades. It's not Lars Nootbaar's fault, though, that the Cardinals stunk in the postseason. When he had 2 games to perform, he did. He hit .333 in those 2 games. He got on base 50% of the time. He ended up with an OPS of 1,000 in those 2 games. But it was 2 games. There's only so much that you can do when your team is not available in the postseason. Meanwhile, Adolis Garcia, yes, he was a part of it, but they played 15 games. He got 70 plate appearances in those 15 games. And so when you are out there playing and you perform the way that he did with an 1,100 OPS, he was amazing. It becomes a little easier for you to show out on a national stage. What I'm saying is over the last 3 full calendar years, the 3 seasons, if you're just looking at what those guys have done on the baseball field during the regular season, which is all I can really judge by for the 3 players because Lars hasn't really had the opportunity in the postseason, they've been pretty much the same. It comes back to what you said, though, the injuries. Newt's got to stay healthy, man.
Yeah.
If Newt stays healthy this year, and he puts up the exact same numbers that he has over the last 3 seasons, just the average of those years, and he puts it out there this season. If people still view it as being underwhelming, then what I think there has to be is a conversation about what we view as a success. And whether or not what guys are doing elsewhere, if we would actually view that as a success here. Somebody on the text line said those numbers that I put out there are wonky. There's nothing wonky about them.
Those are numbers.
They are the same. Like, it is... However you want to evaluate performance offensively, batting average, on-base percentage, slugging percentage, OPS, OPS plus, if you want to go to the more nerdy numbers like wins above replacement, whatever it is that you want to evaluate offensive performance on for any individual player, they are basically the same over the past 3 years on their offensive production. Newt, Adolis Garcia, and Randy A. So that it begs the question of, are we overestimating those guys because they're gone? And underestimating what Lars Nootbaar has done because he's here. And we're just projecting, effectively, the failures of the organization onto those 2 guys that left so they get better. They get a boost suddenly because they're away from the stench of Mo. Meanwhile, because Lars is the guy that they picked, we have to evaluate him differently because he's here and we see him every single night and we get the successes, but more often than not, we get the failures and the injuries that we have to deal with here locally. So I find that conversation in the comparison of Newt to those other outfielders that have walked to be a little interesting. And I do think it's something that at least I will be paying attention to for the upcoming season. It ultimately comes down to health. If he's healthy, he's going to be a really good player, even if not a superstar. He's Alex. That's Bradford Bruns. I'm Brandon Kiley. You've got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Time for some NFL quick hitters next year on 101 ESPN.
It's time for another moment in Blues history.
On this day back in 1983, the Blues would put 4 up on Winnipeg. The Blues would score the first goal, Joe Mullen's 16th of the season, at the end of the first period. Winnipeg would tie it up on the power play, but then Mike Zook would get the Blues the lead back in the second. Winnipeg would tie it for the last time early in the third, but a late goal by Mike Zook, his second of the game, and then Tim Bothwell, a shorthanded empty net goal, capped off a Blues win.
This date in Blues history was powered by Classic Air Care, making people comfortable since 1926. For all your HVAC needs, classicaircare.com. This is exactly where you want to be, listening to us. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
With Alex and Bradford on BK, you got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. It is time for some NFL quick hitters. And Alex, let's start, interestingly enough, with what you just brought up off air. We officially have the updated Super Bowl odds on who is most likely to win the Super Bowl according to Las Vegas. Here they are. The Detroit Lions are plus 290, so basically 3-1 odds. The Chiefs are 3.5-1. The Eagles are plus 420, so effectively 4-1. The Ravens are plus 470, and then the Bills are at 5.5-1. Then there is a massive teardrop after that. The Rams are plus 1,600, so 16-1. The Commanders are 26-1 to win the Super Bowl.
Damn.
And the Texans are 44-1 to win the Super Bowl.
Okay, that one I understand.
As of today, Alex, if you were trying to have a realistic chance to win your money, but you were also taking the longest odds possible, which team would you be backing right now?
I think it would be the Commanders. I mean, like, realistic odds, it's going to be a long shot, but I do think the Washington Commanders could play toe-to-toe with the Lions, and if you do that, I give them the chance of beating whoever comes out of that Eagles-Rams one, and now you're talking about a one-game performance against either the Chiefs, Bills, or Ravens. So, I mean, if I'm going realistic shot, I do think the Washington Commanders would be the best in terms of longest odds. The other one, I would put money on the Rams. Like, I think the Super Bowl realistically could come from the NFC. It's just going to come down to who that AFC opponent is.
Washington is enticing, but at the end of the day, I have to lean in Tanner's direction here and go with the Rams. Not exactly that I was wowed. I was absolutely exhilarated with what I saw on both sides of the ball against Minnesota. But when you're going up against Philadelphia, yes, in Philly, it's not as if I don't have the foremost trust in the Eagles, especially with what I saw against Green Bay. If you're able to take down Philly, and then depending on what transpires there against Detroit, the easier path in my mind is for the Rams. And so if you're able to advance all the way to that stage, who knows? I still go with the veteran experience there more so than Washington.
I think there's only 5 teams remaining that could win the Super Bowl. I don't think the Rams can do it. I don't think the Commanders can do it. I don't think the Texans can do it. So give me the Bills. They're the longest odds of the other 5 teams that I mentioned: Lions, Chiefs, Eagles, Ravens, Bills, in that order. I would go with the Bills at plus 550.
And you think the Eagles can win it over the Rams?
Yeah.
And I
think the Eagles are winning this weekend. I do not think they cover. I think that's going to be closer than the current line would suggest. And I don't think that the Eagles will beat any of those teams from the AFC.
Yeah, I can't put any stock in the Eagles. I'm very out on that team because of Jalen Hurts' performance, and I do feel like at some point we're going to get a Nick Sirianni bump in the bad direction. So I would put more money on the Rams than the Eagles in this one. I agree on the other 4. Like, the Bills are your best odds, probably, if you realistically want to win, because I think they've got the longest odds in terms of, I believe, can win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, the Eagles, I think, can win it in a way that's just ugly. I don't think anybody enjoys watching the Eagles, and so I think people are slightly underestimating who they are right now. They have an elite level defense, man. That defense is really good, and it's playing at the best level that it has all season, so they're peaking at the right time. Their corners are excellent. They shut down opposing passing games, and then their front 7 just suffocating when you try to run it against them. So if they're going to get to the Super Bowl, they'll do it by beating the Rams like 23-17 or something like that in a game nobody really enjoys watching, and then they'll do it by beating one of the Commanders or the Lions 20-17 as well. So it's ugly. It's not particularly fun. I think that's their formula right now. They just run the hell out of the football, and it ends with us all saying, like, that's the team that we got to watch in the Super Bowl this year.
My concern for that, though, is when another team figures out how to stop the run. Which, I mean, it's a tough thing to ask when you got Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts. But if you find a way to at least limit that team, they have nothing else to fall back on because Jalen Hurts can't throw that football.
As we go through some NFL quick hitters, let's get to our next thing here. Alex, who was the team that impressed you the most based on their wild card performance? Which team stood out to you the most and opened your eyes the most about their future based on what they were able to do in the wild card round?
Man, I think it's going to be weird to say. I think the Denver Broncos actually got me a little excited in terms of their...
Impressed you?
If you're going off of future...
Based on just this?
If you're going off of future, yeah.
You were impressed by their 31-7 loss?
I was impressed by their quarterback.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just in terms of that first play, like, you could see signs. I think they muffed that game up in the second half because of their game plan in terms of Sean Payton being like, oh, we're going to possess the football. They got away from just throwing the football, where I think Bo Nix actually succeeded. Buffalo's an awesome team. They had no chance in that game. Yep. The first drive where Denver went downfield and scored that, I'm like, damn, okay. Like, I think they screwed that up. Like, you asked off a future, I think Denver put themselves in a pretty fun position.
Ask it a different way. For what we're going to see next weekend,
like that one.
I did not like it. I don't agree with it at all.
I defended it, though.
You did defend it. He had a fractured back as well, so the fact that he was able to play that way.
He had to throw that football.
Credit where it's due. But no, I did not. I was not impressed.
Not like that.
I was much more impressed by what the Broncos did during the regular season than what I saw from them in a wild card weekend, especially considering I bet on them to cover that spread, and they very much did not cover the spread.
They got my 7-leg parlay. So.
Out of the teams that we will see next weekend.
There we go. Okay, I understand it now.
Which performance opened your eyes the most from wild card weekend?
It's Washington. I think Washington's got a shot to either get to an NFC championship this year, things go their way, get to a Super Bowl, and like you're just touching the surface of what Jaden Daniels is. Like, I wonder if Jaden Daniels has a better career than C.J. Stroud.
I could see that.
Yeah. And I honestly think it's just because of the situation he was put in and the success that they have right away. If you can get to an NFC championship, there's confidence going crazy with that team.
Thank you for clarifying, BK, because I was going to say, have no fear.
The Broncos, right?
No. I was actually leaning Texans for the future. You know with whom I'm rolling at Arrowhead this coming weekend. But as far as the immediate foreseeable future goes, yeah, me too, Alex, as far as Washington is concerned, because we saw so many different signs in the second half of the season of Daniels being able to do his thing. Whether you want to confine him to the pocket, move him outside of the pocket, making those off-platform throws. This team, basically, it doesn't matter. It hasn't mattered to this point that you don't have a consistent ground game besides Daniels, because I will say this as well. I like, in addition to McLaurin, I like Brown potentially coming on as a second option there for the QB. But this defense, I don't think it's getting enough credit for the way in which it was able to hold down, Mike Evans aside, the Tampa Bay offense, which had ripped apart a number of good defenses down the stretch. So I'm not saying it's filled with world beaters on that side of the football, but if you're seeing progression there as well, it's just a well-rounded, balanced team.
I'm going with the Bills. And the reason why, I didn't know that they were going to be able to run the ball like that in the postseason, especially against a good defense. And the Broncos have a very good defense. And B, there were some signs of slippage on their defensive side of the ball down the stretch. Gave up 44 against the Rams. Gave up 42 against the Detroit Lions. Even gave up 21 against the New England Patriots a couple of weeks ago. There were some questions that were fair, I think, about, did the Bills' defense peak too early? They get Milano back into the lineup. They look much better last week against Denver. And I thought had overall just a very good day against the Denver Broncos. So it's not that I was surprised that Buffalo is good. We knew all year. I've been saying all season, Alex. I think Buffalo is the biggest threat to the Kansas City Chiefs. But still, I just wanted to see it from them and to put together that kind of a performance where it was a slugfest, man. They put 6 offensive linemen on the field. I think it was 1 out of every 3 plays for them in that game against the Denver Broncos. I don't know if they're going to be able to do the same thing against the Ravens. I would bet against it. But I think they can win in other ways. So for them to show multiple ways that they can win, depending on what the matchup calls for, that to me was really impressive, and it opened my eyes about what they can be, what the next level is for them now that they're in the postseason.
If you had to do the opposite of that topic, who got you
most disappointing?
Yeah, in terms of their future.
Are you talking about based on the teams that are playing next week?
Because I got one, and I want to see if you're in the same line of thinking as I am.
I guess you'd probably have to go with the Eagles because of the lack of offense.
Yeah.
Because the Texans, while I do not think that they have a chance this week against the Chiefs, I mean, they played really well. So there's nothing to be disappointed by their performance. The Ravens and Bills both played exceptionally well. The Commanders looked good against the Buccaneers. And the Rams last night looked great. By process of elimination, there was really only one team that looked sluggish that ended up winning in the first round, and it was the Eagles. So I'd go with them.
That was my thought process because, their passing game is very concerning for the future with Jalen Hurts, who's there now. And, this was an incredible season by Saquon Barkley. Does anyone believe that they can continue this? I don't think so. So that was the one I was thinking.
It's got to be Philly because everything about that game, especially the offensive performance, it was ho-hum. And here's my question against L.A. as well. And, yes, the defense has made strides in the second half of the schedule. If you're Philadelphia, you don't make it could have been a critical mistake of essentially going away from Saquon Barkley for long stretches in the second quarter. For the life of me, BK, couldn't figure out why that was the mentality there in the second quarter. He's rushing the football, and then we're taking to the air for no apparent reason.
Yeah. I think against the Rams, that's got to be the formula. Like you have to get involved, Saquon Barkley, not just in the running game. What I want to see more of is them getting him involved in the passing game. Get him into open space. How do you utilize him when he can get the yards after catch? That's the thing that I want to see from the Eagles this week. I do think they're going to win that game. So I'm not low on the Eagles right now. As of today, I would probably pick them to come out of the NFC. I think they will win that conference. They just didn't look good.
Yeah.
Their first round performance wasn't impressive at all.
Yeah, they're my third team to come out of the NFC. I would have them. I would have them below the Lions and Commanders, and then the Rams kind of right there with them.
Here you go. He's Alex. That's Bradford. I'm BK. Coming up in 15 minutes, we're going to dive into the junk drawer. But next, this is the stretch that will determine not only if the Blues are going to be able to make the playoffs or not. I think that's almost to the side. This is the stretch that will determine how the Blues approach the trade deadline. Next 2 games, really the next 3. We'll talk about that next here on 101 ESPN.
101 ESPN's Blues Fan of the Week.
Congratulations to Chris Galati from St. Peters, Missouri. He was named our newest 101 ESPN Blues Fan of the Week.
Submit your pick now to be the next 101 ESPN Blues Fan of the Week and take home a pair of tickets to an upcoming Blues game. Learn more at 101ESPN.com.
Alex Ferrario back with you to talk about my friends out at Classic Air Care who have been making people comfortable since 1926. When it comes to your HVAC system, you need a company that you can trust to take care of your family and your home. And I speak so highly of Classic Air Care because they've been doing this for my family for the longest time. They've been taking care of my dad's house since they purchased the home back in 2006. They've taken care of 2 of my homes and Classic Air Care in 2016 and, of course, now in our current house. And I talk so highly also because of the incredible customer service you get, the knowledgeable technicians that come out and take care of your home. And don't just believe me. Check it out online. They've got over 2,500 Google reviews. They got a 4.8 rating by their customers. And all of these reviews are glowing about the service that Classic Air Care provides. This one from Denise. Contacted the company for a second opinion. They located the problem that the original company couldn't find. Sean took pictures, wrote a detailed report of his findings, exactly what we needed to not be railroaded by another company. So call Classic Air Care today. Tell them Alex Ferrario sent you and schedule your appointment today. Classic Air Care and ClassicAirCare.com.
hear from you. Use the Scott Lee Mic Drop feature on the 101 mobile app. Give us your opinion on anything St. Louis sports with a mic drop.
Brought to you by the Scott Lee Heating Company.
101 ESPN Sports Center.
Wildcard weekend wraps up. I'm Bradford Bruns with your Sports Center update powered by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Last night in Glendale, Matt Stafford's Rams overwhelmed Minnesota 27-9. LA's divisional round opponent, number 2 seed Philadelphia. That showdown happens Sunday, as does Baltimore Buffalo. 101 ESPN will carry both games. This evening, though, dedicated to pucks on these airwaves. Blues Flames pregame unfolds at 6. Calgary is riding a 3-game winning streak while STL pursues its 3rd home victory of 2025. Matthew Joseph and Alexander Texier re-enter the lineup. The Sports Center update is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
They are St. Louis. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
With Alex and Bradford, I'm BK. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Alex, is a big stretch for the St. Louis Blues. We've talked about it as a must-win game, and it's not even just for the playoffs. That's obviously the biggest factor here. But part of what this does is it influences what Doug Armstrong is going to do at the deadline, which then has a significant influence about what you're going to be able to do for the playoff push in the final stretch of the season. Well, what's going to influence that decision for Doug Armstrong is how you look relative to the rest of the Western Conference. And just frankly, it ain't looking good in your division. Like, the division feels like it's completely off the table. They're not getting a top 3 spot in there. It's coming down to, can you end up in one of these wild card spots in the Western Conference? And right now, Colorado's one of those teams. Well, they have 53 points as of today, and they've played the same number of games as you. You're 9 points back of them. Feels unlikely. The other team, and the last spot that's available for the postseason for you, is the Calgary Flames. They've played 2 fewer games than you and have 5 more points than you. If you win each of these next 2 games, they will still have played 2 fewer games. They've got some games in hand, but you'll only be 1 point back. Okay, that you can work with. If you lose each of the next 2 games, though, Alex, you will have played 2 more games than them, and you will be 9 points behind them.
Yeah.
You have effectively been buried in the Western Conference if you lose these next 2 games. So whether you want to call them must-wins or just hugely significant for the Blues, if I'm in Doug Armstrong's shoes and they lose these next 2 games, man, there is no reason for me to start to talk anymore about what we're going to be adding at the deadline. Now it becomes, are we holding or are we potentially selling? Because there's a limited amount of time remaining before you get to the trade deadline because of that Four Nations face-off break that's about to come up.
Yeah, you're selling. I don't think there's any questions of what do you do. And I would extend it beyond these 2 games because the Utah game to me is important as well on Saturday. Because let's say hypothetically...
Sure, we can expand this to the next 3.
Yeah, because I mean, Utah wins that one. They've also got 2 games in hand on you, and they would be 1 point ahead of you with 2 games in hand. So, like, you've essentially put yourself in a position that if you don't find a way, and I would say you need 3 of 4 points against Calgary on top of 2 points against Utah, if you don't come away with 5 of 6 points in this next 3-game stretch, you've been buried to the point that you're not overcoming this unless you go on some type of 13-game win streak, which I would say is close to impossible. And then you become sellers. And the question is, what do you have to sell to teams? Because I think Doug Armstrong's mindset is going to be, okay, we know who this team is. You're inconsistent. By the time the Four Nations tournament is done and we are back in action, we are going to be bringing guys up from the minor leagues to get a taste of the NHL level. Because the whole purpose of Doug Armstrong's the rest of the season is going to be, how do we implement the Dvorskys, the guys that are going to be playing in the NHL next year to get us to the playoffs? They need to start working under Jim Montgomery. They need a taste of the NHL. And that's what these next 3 games determine. Because the Calgary Flames have won 3 in a row. They have done what you have yet to do this season.
That's crazy. And I can't believe they haven't had a single 3-game winning streak.
And I have to go back through and look at this, but I believe they are one of 2 teams in the Western Conference that has not won 3 consecutive games. I believe it's them and the Nashville Predators that have yet to put 3 games in a row together. What does that tell you when you're in the same conversation as Nashville? Chicago has won 3 games in a row. Chicago has won 3 in a row. I know that for a fact. So if you can't find a way to stop this team, which, look, Calgary's been playing great, but Calgary's only averaging 2.6 goals per game. They've got the worst penalty kill in the National Hockey League, and they're finding ways to win 3 in a row. if you can't put that team away, then yeah, I think Doug Armstrong's going to be looking at this and saying, cool, this team told me what they are. I don't care what happens between now and the trade deadline. We will be finding ways to move off assets and bringing younger pieces in so that they can get some NHL experience.
And Army does this, man. He'll say exactly what you just mentioned in public.
Yeah.
When we ask at the deadline if they decide either to sell or to stand pat, we'll ask, hey, what led you to this decision? He will probably reference these games.
Yeah.
Because I remember last year he talked about it, and there was that Columbus game right before the break, and then they had that Nashville game. And that Nashville game was one that a lot of people circled and said, that was when you knew.
Yep.
And the Blues were in better position then than they are right now to be able to make the postseason. And after that Nashville game, I remember we all said it, and then they lost 6-1 later on, I think a week or two later,
to Detroit.
Against Detroit. And with those three games, Columbus and then Nashville and then Detroit, everybody and their mother came to the conclusion this is not a playoff team. There were still some that held out hope up to those games, but not afterwards. Eventually you have to face the reality. My hope is that this doesn't become that, because it can. If you lose these games, and then if you lose again on Saturday potentially, you've buried yourself. You will have at that point lost 6 of your last 7 games. You did so against Columbus twice, Calgary twice, and Utah once. That's it. You're done. So you at least have to win 2 of the next 3. I think if you had your choice, you'd win the next 2.
Yeah.
These are the 2 most important. Utah matters, don't get me wrong, but you can still keep up with Utah. Being a point back of them is not a death knell. You've got more games against them the rest of the year as well. 2 more of them. So you've still got head-to-head performances against Utah. This is it against Calgary, man.
Yeah.
No more opportunities for the 4-point swing, and they will have emerged so far ahead of you, it's going to be hard for you to be able to fight your way back in. A question for you leading into tonight's game, Alex. They've made some lineup changes. They're going with Jake Neighbors on the top line. They're adding Texier onto that third line with Saad and Sonny. And now you have Joseph on the fourth line instead of Nathan Walker. What do you make of the changes, and do you think it gives them an advantage compared to what they had in there previously?
I think it gives them advantage in terms of Neighbors being on the top line, because I don't think that top line has been very good lately. And frankly, it's kind of been a liability on the defensive side of things, and you can't have that. I don't know if it really changes much. Like, Texier's got offense, but we've seen it goes cold after a couple of games. Does it help you now? Sure. Is it going to help you against Utah in 2 games? I don't think so. I like the Joseph decision. It sucks to take Nathan Walker out. Everybody loves Nathan Walker, but Matthew Joseph is a really good penalty killer. And right now, your penalty kill needs some type of life support. So you put him in. Hopefully that can provide a little bit. Texier comes in, provides you a little bit more potential offense and the depth of scoring. To me, the next 3 games are going to come down to your top 2 lines. And that's why I think they put Jake Neighbors up there. Because right now, Jake Neighbors has gone silent. You don't have the offense. Although he's doing so much more away from the puck, you don't have offense from him right now. Brandon Saad hasn't been producing it, and that top line has been a liability. You need to get your top 2 lines going consistently, and that's what I think gives this team a little bit more help.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to the Texier thing. I don't get it, but whatever. They wanted to sit Bolduc for a game, and he has some passes in individual games where you look at it, you're like, just not a good decision. So whatever. This has now been multiple coaches that have told you the same thing about Bolduc, and they all seem to believe that he's going to have a good career, that he's going to be a good player in this league, but he still needs some seasoning. Cool. Makes sense. He's a young player. I've wanted to see Joseph in this lineup for a while, so I'm glad to see him in there. I just didn't think that it would be at the expense of Nathan Walker.
Yeah.
Who I think has been more than fine. And when you've needed a spark, I think Walker continues to be the guy that can at times provide that for you. I would have preferred to see Joseph in that opportunity on that third line. And if you're going to go to Texier, put him on the fourth line. But whatever. It's a fine move. I think it speaks to their personnel issues more so than anything else. They just lack that opportunity. Joseph's biggest thing, you got to help him on the PK. If you're going to be in the lineup, dude, you've got one main priority, and it is work your ass off on that PK and make them better than a 65% unit, which is what they've been under Jim Montgomery.
And honestly, try and find a way to bring a little offense to that fourth line. Like, as much as we love Nathan Walker, you get offense here and there. Matthew Joseph is a guy who put 35 points up last year for the Ottawa Senators. Try and provide a little bit more offense to a fourth line that has 2 big bodies in Toropchenko and Radek Faksa. But you're right, your penalty kill needs to be great if Matthew Joseph is playing in this lineup. I think in an ideal world, they would probably take Brandon Saad out, but they can't take Saad out and keep Bolduc in because they need some type of veteran presence on that third line. And I don't think they like Texier on the fourth line. He's good, but he doesn't play the same way that Faksa and Toropchenko play.
I get that. So it's fine. I think that third line is going to be a liability for you tonight. If I'm Calgary, that's the one that I'm looking to expose.
Yeah.
Saad, Texier, Sonny, and listen, we all love Sonny, but he's slower than he has been in his past. Like, he's just, time's catching up with him. The injuries are catching up with him. And Saad and Texier are at times liabilities defensively. So you add it all up. That's the line that you're trying to expose. Now it's going to be harder to do. They're on the road as opposed to being in Calgary. So maybe that leads to the decision to do it at home tonight based on the situation you're in.
And my prediction is that line is going to have the fewest ice time out of all of them, because I think you're going to go heavy in this game with your top two, and then you're going to have your fourth line. Sonny's going to be the guy who gets a lot of ice time because he's playing on the power play. He'll get penalty kill time. But I think you're looking at those other two. I think you're probably talking like 11, 12 minutes.
Coming up in the 1 o'clock hour, we are going to give you a chance to score a pair of lawn tickets to see Chris Stapleton. That's coming up on July 11th. That show will be live at Hollywood Casino Amphitheater. So be sure to stay tuned for the 1 o'clock hour, an opportunity for you to score a pair of tickets to see Chris Stapleton on July 11th. We'll have that opportunity for you all week here on BK and Ferrario. The Fast Lane will also have a chance for you as well this week. So be sure to stay tuned 11 to 2 and then 2 to 6 right here on 101 ESPN if you would like to go see Chris Stapleton live. Coming up in 15 minutes, is there any reason to believe in Miles Mikolas for 2025? Try to polish that one off for you guys in 15 minutes. But next, the Junk Drawer here on 101 ESPN.
This is Jake Neighbors, and today is Blues Game Day on 101 ESPN.
Blues Game Day is presented by Buffalo Wild Wings, the ultimate arena for wings and wins.
New year, new tire deals at Dobbs. Big savings when you buy 4 tires. Get a $100 instant rebate on 4 select Pirelli tires, up to $80 rebate on Goodyear tires, and $60 back on 4 Cooper tires. Click on GoToDobbs.com for New Year tire deals. Save with Dobbs New Year deals on expert auto service too, including alignments, brakes, batteries, and quality Valvoline fluid exchanges and fuel system treatment. Click on GoToDobbs.com for New Year service deals. Whatever you drive, gas, hybrid, EV, for money saver deals on the best tire brands and expert auto service, click on GoToDobbs.com now. And while you're at GoToDobbs.com, request an appointment at any of Dobbs stores, conveniently located all over town and in Columbia, Cape Girardeau, and our newest store, now open at Lake of the Ozarks. Happy New Year from Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers, the real deal for real deals since 1976.
Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
we've got your chance to win a 4-pack of tickets to Monster Jam. Returning for 2 huge shows this Saturday, January 18th and Sunday, January 19th at the Dome at America Center. Get ready to cheer, scream, and be amazed as massive Monster Jam trucks and world champion drivers take over St. Louis for a weekend packed with high-flying action and jaw-dropping stunts. Get all the info and enter to win that free 4-pack of tickets now at 101ESPN.com or on your 101 mobile app. Powered by Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers.
Giving you the picture, the real big St. Louis sports picture. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. Let's open it up. The junk drawer with BK and Ferrario.
So I've got a story that's one of my worst fears. You know, we all have these fears that are kind of irrational, but they're in the back of your mind.
Yeah.
One of mine is going to the hospital, having some kind of surgical procedure after anesthesia and being awake for that procedure.
Man. I have those panics every time I have to do a colonoscopy. And I'm like, man,
Dude,
if I wake up, this is going to be a bad day.
It is my biggest fear. There was a movie back in 2007. It's called Awake.
Yeah. Was that Jessica Alba in it?
It's a bad movie. Objectively horrible movie. And yet it, put that into the back of my mind that that's a possibility. And for whatever reason, it's always stuck with me. So when I was reading this story about a man in Oregon who suffered severe burns after his face caught fire while he was in surgery, suing the hospital for nearly $1 million.
That's all you're suing?
He said that he was actually awake during all of this as well. And it made me want to lose my mind. Like, just put me out of my misery. I'm good, man.
Yep.
It's the irrational fear that for whatever reason, I cannot get away from.
Did you ever watch the movies Final Destination?
Oh, yeah, dude.
The one where so I've never I wear contacts, glasses, they've broken, but I've always people have brought up LASIK before. Final Destination 3 screwed me over because that woman, when they walk out, her eyes were wide open and the LASIK is just drilling lasers into her eyeballs. Nope. Cool, never going to get LASIK in my life.
I can't drive behind a truck that's hauling
lumber?
logs.
Yep.
Can't do it.
That's why I don't do roller coasters.
Because of that movie. Anybody that goes into a tanning bed, God bless you. Good for you, man. Yeah. I'm good. I'm good.
Driving over that bridge to go to Illinois on 255, it looks a lot like one of those Final Destination bridges, and every time I drive, I speed a little faster to get through.
I'm surprised they haven't remade those movies.
There's another one coming out.
Oh, is it?
Oh, yeah. Are you kidding me? Yeah, I think it's Final Destination 8 or something like that, or Final Destination Reborn.
Rebooting is all the rage. So you do a soft reboot, you have an original cast member or two, and then you spin a pull.
Yeah, but you know what? Those movies make sense because you're not going because of how great the storyline is. You're going to see what kind of weird stuff they're going to scare the bleep out of you with moving forward.
Final Destination Bloodlines is the new
that's
one
what it
that
is.
they're coming out with. It's coming out later this year. The last one was produced back in 2011.
It's been a minute.
So
think of the things
almost 15 years.
Think of the things they've scared you from doing, like going to a racetrack, riding roller coasters, working out. The most recent one was guys lifting weights and the fan just dropping down on him while he's lifting dumbbells.
Who are the writers for this?
I don't know.
With this stuff because that's what I want to know. It's one thing to go see the movie and be creeped out by it. It's another thing entirely to be the one in the writer's room that's hold on, wait a second.
Let's come up with this.
What if we have them on the highway and they're behind this lumber carrier and it falls out and it goes right through the windshield and kills him? Could that be something that works? And somebody else in the room's that's the one. We got to go with that.
Honestly, I would love to be in that room, coming up with different ways to die. Be we got to make this thing creative. The dude was sucked down into the drain of the pool, and it basically sucked his insides out. Final Destination has found a way to ruin my life a couple of times.
It's somewhat brought up Saw movies as well as something that's similar, where you just. Some of the stuff that they came up with early on in those.
Yeah, but that one never really creeped me out as much
really?
as much as
the Saw movies.
The first one was creepy because it's serial killers and how weird they are. They could come up with that stuff. But the more they did it, it's okay, they're just trying to make it gory. A Final Destination was trying to find ways to creep you out in your personal life.
Saw kind of reminds me of the original Squid Game. There's some similarities between the two. Bad people that end up in these situations, and then the guy that's basically saying you can win your freedom if you're able to get through this game. And no spoilers here, but Squid Game's kind of similar in that regard. A little different. There's thousands of people.
That was the one thing I never got into and I never watched. Squid Games. Yeah.
The new one just came out. I'm 2 episodes in. It's pretty good so far.
Is it worth my time?
I think so. You got to understand what you're getting into.
So,
though.
like, I liked the Saw films, so it would be worth my time then if I liked the Saw films. Because you're right.
Some similarities. It's not a
like
one-for-one by any stretch, but it's got some similarities in terms of the theme of them.
Season 3 already has the green light, too. It's sticking around for a bit.
Of course it does.
I'll be interested to see if it continues to go down a path that's worth seeing. Because I thought season 1 was good. Season 2, I don't know. We'll see. I've enjoyed the way that they're getting back into it, but we'll see.
Apparently, there's a list of the top 10 Final Destination deaths.
Oh, really?
There's a list of them in terms of like the most absurd ones.
What is at the top of that list?
Let's find out what number 1 is, ladies and gentlemen. By the way, great job somebody tweeting that to me while we were talking about this. The number 1 was the plane in the first film, where the plane obviously combust. The tanning bed was number 2.
That makes sense to me.
Number 3 was the barbecue. I don't remember this one.
Oh,
someone said that one. I don't remember that one.
I don't recall that.
And the second one, I don't know that one. 4th one was in the elevator. I don't remember that one either, so I must have missed a couple of these. And number 5 on this list was the gymnastics support beam one, where she breaks her neck on it.
How about the train? Stifler was never the same after that.
Oh, Stifler. LASIK surgery was number 6. Let me tell you, when I saw that, it was Final Destination 5. When I saw that, I'm like, cool, I've never want to get LASIK, and I will never think about getting LASIK because of this film.
Yeah, it's, that will forever be a part of my memory. Like, there was something in, like, the deep recesses of my mind that when you think about Final Destination, it brings up some trauma, for sure, in your mind. All right, he's Alex. That's Bradford. I'm BK. Coming up in 15 minutes, we'll play a game of Bet It or Forget It. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get any of your scenarios in for the show. But coming up next, I know that people are going to push back on it. I don't even blame you. Is there any reason to believe in Miles Mikolas heading into the 2025 season? We'll discuss it next year on 101 ESPN.
101 ESPN is your home for Blues hockey. And every month during the season, you can register to win tickets to an upcoming Blues game. Enter to score free Blues tickets now at 101ESPN.com or on the 101 app. Brought to you by Ted Drewes, serving original frozen custard since 1929.
Hey, it's BK, and I got to tell you about my friends over at Victory Men's Health. They are here to help you unlock your inner champion. And the way to do so is go to victorymenshealth.com. That's victorymenshealth.com. When you get to their website, you can read all about what they can do for you. And that means different things for different people. For some, it might mean helping you with the weight loss goals that you've set for 2025. They're difficult to accomplish on your own. They can potentially help you out with them over at Victory Men's Health. For others, maybe it's low testosterone. Maybe you want to learn more about their red light therapy programs. Maybe you just want some of their IV infusions. Again, it's going to look a little different for everybody. They're going to personalize what you need to unlock your inner champion. And you can go over there today, again, at victorymenshealth.com. They have 4 great locations across the St. Louis area. And when you set up your first appointment, it's super easy to do. You go to their website, click on the Book Now tab, and all you have to do, put in your name, email, phone number, tell them BK with 101 ESPN sent you, and tell them that exactly what it is that you'd like to accomplish. You can check them out today at victorymenshealth.com. That's victorymenshealth.com.
WXOS HD1 East St. Louis. 101 ESPN is driven by Auto Centers Nissan, home of the lifetime warranty and 30-day return. We're right back to more of it. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
Here we go. Let's talk about it. Miles Mikolas was the subject of Derek Gould's latest piece, and it's going to make everybody excited to hear what our topic is on this. Is there any reason to believe that he could be better in 2025? 314-399-9646. That's the Air Comfort Service text line. Sure, we'll get a lot of them.
Look at Brandon on this one, because him trying to defend this is going to be fantastic.
Here's what he had to say to Derek Gould. I think it's a good quote. I don't think anybody's going to care. I love St. Louis. I've done nothing but try to stay in St. Louis, and part of me feels like I owe the people of St. Louis better baseball. If this is my last year there, and we know it could be, then I want to pitch well enough that it feels like, hey, we want you to come back. Let's keep this thing going. Nobody wants at the end for people to say, good riddance, end quote. It's a good quote. Good quote by Miles Mikolas. It means nothing if he doesn't pitch well this year, because that will be exactly the sentiment that Cardinals fans have for Miles Mikolas if it doesn't go well. It'll be good riddance, because over the past 2 years, he has a 5 ERA. Second worst ERA among starting pitchers that have qualified, other than just Patrick Corbin, worst pitcher in baseball. He posts. He's started at least 32 games each of the last 3 years. He's thrown at least 170 innings each of the last 3 seasons. He's a guy that goes out there and, when healthy, he makes every start that is available to him. But the results just haven't been there, man. Last year was an abomination. 5.3 ERA for a dude that makes 32 starts and wasn't hurt. Doesn't strike anybody out. Gives up way too much contact. Led the league in hits allowed 2 years ago. And the only reason that wasn't the case last year is because he didn't throw enough innings to be up there in those volume stats last year. So, Alex, that's the backdrop to me asking you a very simple question. Can it be better this year? Not will it. Can it be better in 2025 in your mind?
I don't think so. I think Miles Mikolas is who Miles Mikolas has been these last 2 years. And we talked about this, that with the banning of the shift, it was really going to change how Miles Mikolas was able to perform and put out when he goes out there and does 30-plus starts. I don't, unfortunately for Miles, think this is going to get any better. You're 35, going on 36 years old. You have consistently been one of the highest contact pitchers in Major League Baseball. And I think your defense is going to be getting worse this season behind him, because you're going to be playing Wilson Contreras at first base.
That's a really good point. And third, you're getting worse probably if Nolan Arenado's
gone. And who knows what the outfield is going to look like if they have to experiment with Lars Nootbaar in center field. I don't know what the catching situation is going to look like. Like, you're not going to have Gold Glove defense around you next season. So I don't think this is going to get any prettier for Miles Mikolas. The hope, I guess, is you find a way to do kind of what Lance Lynn did, to where like every third or fourth start, it's at least decent, to where you look at it and you're like, hey, great number 5. But because of what you're getting paid, no, I don't think there's anything that's going to justify what Miles Mikolas' season is going to look like.
I have little faith that at age 35, on the heels of the season that was in 2024, that we're going to have anything remotely resembling a reclamation project, and maybe not even a competent back-end starter at that. Would it be unfair, though, BK, to basically look at this situation as, yes, you have him on the books, checkbooks, for one more season, and through the first half of the year, he goes to post, as we have said. That is the one thing that he offers to you consistently. Hopefully he's able to log more innings, but he basically is holding that position. He's holding that place. And then when the second half of the season arrives, we'll see where the team is in the standings and whatnot. Maybe then, potentially, you could pivot in that instance. At least a Quinn Matthews could be on the horizon. I'm not saying it's a straight swap,
sure,
but who knows where you're going to be in July, August, and at that point, I think everybody is wondering, is Matthews going to be ready for the bigs?
Yeah, I think that's the hope, but what I wanted to focus on here is whether or not Mikolas can pitch well enough to be in the rotation, to where you want him to be a part of the rotation, and you're looking at others or injuries that become the replacement spot for Quinn Matthews. Because I think the natural landing spot is, Miles Mikolas out of the rotation. Like a 1-for-1 swap. You said you didn't want to go there? Go there. All right, it's fine. If he pitches the way that he did last year, they're going to have to do that at some point this season, and he'll be the long man coming out of your bullpen. But I'm with you, Alex. It's not a pretty place to be, but it's the reality of where they're at. if I'm looking for optimism, and I don't have much, like my honest answer is I don't think it's going to be a whole lot better this year. I think it could be a little better because last year was horrible, but I think it's probably more what it was 2 years ago, where it's a mid-4s, high-4s ERA instead of a low-5s ERA. And it's nothing to write home about, but at least it's a little better. If you're looking for a reason for optimism, it's probably looking back to Waino. And Mikolas isn't Waino. I want to say that on the front end, but Waino looked like he was done, man. Like, looked completely finished. And then it just, like, had this third act of his career where he finished in over the last, like, 2020 to 2022. Waino was not just good. He was one of the better pitchers in the National League in that stretch. And that was coming off of seasons where 4.6, 5.1, 4.5 with injuries, and then a 4.2 ERA. So he had really struggled for almost a 5-year stretch. And then it just snapped back into place during that 2020 season. I don't know why. I don't know how. I can't explain it. He said it was he found his curveball again. That's going to be what it takes for Miles Mikolas to be able to get back to some semblance of not elite level pitching, but a better version of himself. I don't think he's going to get back to what he was in 2018 or what he was in 2022, but can you be the guy you were in 2019 or 2021? Where it was a low 4s and you trusted him to go out there and give you some quality innings for the team? That's what I think the Cardinals need to be hoping for this year. And that will require probably one of his breaking balls, either the slider or the curveball, to be a better pitch for him next year. Because he can get to 2 strikes. We know he's going to throw strikes. It's getting that third strike that's been a problem for him.
Let me ask you this, though, BK, because of that, the end of that quote. Is there anything he can do to where people would be saying, bring him back for another year? Because I can't see that at all. Even if he has like a Waino-esque season where it's like, hey, that was pretty good.
It depends. What's the ask? Is the ask, hey, bring him back on a 1-year deal that's similar to Kyle Gibson? If that's the ask,
probably.
Sure. But if he's going to get $10 million as a 37-year-old starter, sure, whatever. That's fine to be a placeholder for another guy for a year. Again, if he, in this unlikely event that he has an Adam Wainwright type of comeback, I'm down for that. But I think that's the only scenario.
Yeah, because, and that's kind of what I'm asking, because you're going to be in a spot where you are going to be transitioning even next year a lot of pitchers that don't have experience at the major league level to the major league level. And are you going to need somebody like this? But, I mean, we have to be talking about like what he did in 2018. No, I mean, that's too much to ask. 2019. And probably a little bit better than that before I would sit there and be like, yeah, bring him back for one more year.
And see, my worry is that in the last 2 months of last season, he was shellacked even more. So for the foreseeable future, that's the question to me. I mean, look at the numbers in August. He had 5 starts for a 6.39 ERA. Outside of that late August turn versus Milwaukee, he was knocked around. Then in September down the stretch, over 6 as well in the 5 starts. So while he hasn't necessarily bottomed out Wainwright style, you saw even more signs of regression when it mattered down the stretch.
Yeah, and to that point, that's what I was going to get to. Somebody on the text line brings up a really good point, in my opinion, from the 314. Guys, Mikolas made 24 starts after the 20th of April last year. If you remove those 4 worst starts, he had a really good ERA in his other starts, 3.9, and he had 13 quality starts in those games. That'll play, but he had a handful of awful games and was otherwise pretty darn good. That's the thing with Mikolas last year. He had 5 games where he did not get an out in the 5th inning. That can't happen. His value for the Cardinals is eating innings. If you're going to have him as a part of this rotation, you can't have basically a 20% of his starts where he's not even recording an out in the 5th. He had a total of 9 starts last year in which he did not get through the 5th inning. That's not okay for a guy like Miles Mikolas. And in some of those starts, it was like legit blow-up games. 4 1/3 innings, 9 earned runs against the Cincinnati Reds. Cardinals never had a chance in that one. It was just, hey, wear it. Yeah. Go out there and get as many outs as you can because this is going incredibly poorly. He had another game earlier in the season, or late in the season against the Mariners. 2 innings, 9 hits, 7 runs allowed, including 6 earned. You've got to eliminate those blow-up games. And I know sometimes that stuff happens, but you've got to find a way to stay the course. And, hey, instead of it being 2 innings, 6 earned runs, give me 5 innings, 4 earned runs. That's the kind of stuff that he's got to find a way to eliminate this season, is just going completely off the rails. I don't know how he does it. I don't know what the plan is for him. I'm not a pitching coach, but him and Dusty Blake got to have that plan this offseason. Otherwise, Yeah, it'll be a rerun. What it was in 2024, and that wasn't good enough. With Alex Ferrario and Bradford Bruns, I'm Brandon Kiley. Coming up in 15 minutes, there are some changes that are taking place in college football. A lot of them people seem to push back against, and I understand that to a degree. There is one consequence of NIL, Alex, that I think has actually been a real positive, a net gain for college football. And we'll tell you what that is coming up in 15 minutes. Better to forget it coming up next.
You can now listen to 101 ESPN on demand. Get caught up on all our shows and podcasts at 101ESPN.com or on the 101 mobile app. 101 ESPN podcasts are presented by the Schaefer Door Company.
Do you bleed blue? My friends at Woods Basement Systems do. You know what's
This is exactly where you want to be listening to us. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. Vegas sets them up, and we We're here to make the call. It's BK and Ferrario's Bet It or Forget It on 101 ESPN.
Presented by Circus Sports Illinois. Sports betting the way it should be.
Let's dive into Bet It or Forget It. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. If you have a scenario, you can always get those in on YouTube as well. YouTube.com/101 ESPN STL. That is where you can go for the graveyard chat. Those studio cams are powered by the Air Alliance team. Coming up later on this hour, we're going to give you a chance to score a pair of tickets to see Chris Stapleton. That's coming up in July. You will have a chance all week on BK and Ferrario and the Fast Lane to win those tickets. So we'll tell you about that coming up later on this hour. Alex, Bet It or Forget It. Ben Johnson, the hottest name on the market right now for head coaching jobs in the NFL. He's the offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions. Bet It or Forget It, he will be the next head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders when all is said and done.
Man, I don't like that place for Ben Johnson, but I'm going to bet it because when Tom Brady's calling you and saying we want you with Las Vegas and the city for Las Vegas, like if you're Ben Johnson, that's the ideal spot. Like you got an ownership group that's going to pay, you would imagine. Tom Brady's a part of it, and you're kind of starting from scratch. So I think I'm going to bet this one. I don't like it for Ben Johnson, but seems like that's the best one.
You don't like the cast of characters there in place in Vegas? Not so much?
I like Max Crosby. That's who I like.
Okay, fair enough. I'm betting it insofar as, okay, for growth, for Johnson getting his first NFL head coaching gig, it is a good opportunity in that respect. If Vegas doesn't botch this one, it just does seem to make a little too much sense. So enjoy this final ride with the Lions.
It makes sense for who? For Vegas or for him?
I think for both parties. I'm not saying the personnel is there in place, actually, but if you want somebody with ingenuity, with originality, you can...
Of course, Ben Johnson's an easy sell. It's the best candidate that they could possibly hire. Sell me on why the Raiders are a good job for Ben Johnson. Sell me on it.
Because it is a head coaching job in the AFC West. It's in the National Football League. Now, I'm not saying that they don't find a way to bungle the NFL draft as well, but you do have a great number of picks. The originality.
Okay, I'll let you finish. But why is it a better job than the Bears or the Jags or the Cowboys, the other jobs that are available? Sell me on why the Raiders are a better job than those. Because Ben Johnson has his pick of the litter.
Fair enough. The Jaguars, I think, are always going to be there in the sense that you can compete in that division, in my mind, right away. Now, Kansas City, of course, you're talking about the AFC West, you're talking about a rapidly improving Chargers team, but also the Bears from that standpoint, I think you can make the same argument that it is just as difficult to compete in the NFC North. Detroit's still going to be around. You've got Green Bay, you've got Minnesota. I think the resources that are going to be given to him, Alex, you said the Raiders, that enterprise itself, I think the resources are going to be there for him to have success, and if they actually give him a leash, as they should, in his first go-around as the head coach, I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt.
That would be the bottom of my list if I'm Ben Johnson because of one thing and one thing only. I'm Patrick Mahomes.
That's my thing, man. I would
go Bears.
I've got Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. I've got Justin Herbert, who I know everybody hates right now, but I think this time next year we're going to get to it and be like, oh yeah, top 10 quarterback in the league. Justin Herbert with Jim Harbaugh. And man, I know I was down on Bo Nix. I still don't think he's a great quarterback. He's top half of the league type of a guy, though. And I think Sean Payton's a really good head coach. I'm joining that division. Why? To battle to get to 8 wins every year? I have no quarterback. I'm in the toughest division in the NFL, arguably, right now.
And I'm picking in the worst spot possible of the draft.
Why would I? And I have no real avenue to get that quarterback. So I don't like that job at all. I have no interest in that job. I'm going to bet it because all the reports seem to indicate he's interested in it, and it does seem like Tom Brady is the connection there. You mentioned the NFC North tough division as well. Sure. Jared Goff and Jordan Love and J.J. McCarthy, a little different to be able to overcome than what I have right now available to me in the AFC West. Also, I don't know what Jared Goff looks like post Ben Johnson. I think it's still pretty good. I don't know that it's quite the same level of ceiling. And if Ben Johnson goes to the Bears, he takes his talents there. That to me is a much better job. I am baffled by the way some of these jobs are being communicated right now or being reported. I'm betting it that he gets it. I don't think it makes sense at all.
I wonder if he gets it. I wonder if they're telling him, like, hey, we're trading up in this draft to get your quarterback.
I guess, but these quarterbacks stink.
Oh, I'm totally with you. But if you're Ben Johnson, you're thinking, And only if you're Ben Johnson, you're like, okay, well, do I like Caleb Williams? Sure, but maybe I can start with my own quarterback. But I that's the last spot I'm going. And frankly, I'm going to the Chicago Bears immediately because I'm the second best team in the NFC North.
A little bit of news to pass along real quick. Deontay Johnson has been waived by the Houston Texans.
Shocking.
This dude must be the worst human being to deal with in the entire world.
And when you go through 4 teams in, one season?
That is tough.
That's like Mike McKenna
Since this time last year...
No, but it's not the same person. Mike went through 7 teams. Mike went through 7 teams. I wasn't saying he's the same guy. McKenna. I'm just saying it's an impressive record that Mike McKenna still holds.
Deontay Johnson went from the Steelers this time last year to the Panthers and then to the Ravens and then to the Texans. 3 of those are playoff teams in the AFC. And they all decided, get rid of you for nothing, basically. Tough look for Deontay Johnson. All right, Alex, what do you got for
sorry,
us?
Mike. I'll let you defend yourself on Friday. I apologize for that one. Guys, bet it or forget it, Taylor Hall is the acquisition that the Blues make at the trade deadline.
Oh, that's a fun one. Sell me on it.
So I was trying to think. So here's my selling point. Power play threat. And why I say power play threat, because if you look at him, you're like, Taylor Hall hasn't been good. Scored 20 goals with Boston under Jim Montgomery, 16 goals under Jim Montgomery. And in those 2 seasons, 11 power play goals with a total of 23 power play points. Unrestricted free agent after this season. He's a winger who plays on the left wing. Pavel Buchnevich can play on the right wing. And he's a player who can play on your top line. I was trying to think of names that would make sense if the Blues were going after something to fix their power play. And like the one that I really like is Dylan Cousins with the Buffalo Sabres, but that's like a big time offseason move if they decide to move him. Taylor Hall, 36 goals in 2 seasons with Jim Montgomery and the Boston Bruins.
What is his contract situation?
$6 million, so it would be at the deadline $3 million. And they have $3.5 million in cap space with the LTIR.
I'd be fine with that. I don't know that they'll do this because it requires, I think, a couple of wins over the next few days. But if they end up making an acquisition, I will bet that it is somebody at a minimum that has this kind of a profile. It makes a lot of sense.
And I don't believe Chicago's going to get a lot for Taylor Hall in the market because he's 34. He's not the same guy that he was. Chicago doesn't have a 5th-round pick in this year's draft. Blues have a 5th-round pick in this year's draft. Would you trade a 5th-round pick for Taylor Hall and half of his salary?
Do you think the Blackhawks would do that, though?
I mean, if I'm Chicago, I get what I could from Taylor Hall. You signed him to help your team in terms of leadership, and obviously it hasn't been working for Connor Bedard.
Yeah, I'm good with it.
Bet it. Love the pedigree. Much like Cam Fowler in Anaheim, I can't properly evaluate virtually anybody on that Blackhawks roster right now. So, yeah,
and
why not?
By the way, he was plus 22 in those 2 games with Jim Montgomery, and this is a guy that in the past Doug Armstrong had been interested in.
I remember that.
Mm-hmm. That was when from
signed.
Edmonton to New Jersey, and then when he went to Boston.
Okay, I like it. You've got connections there. Interest in the past from Army. He played for Jim Montgomery.
Top wing with Robert Thomas.
I like it. Bradford, what do we got?
Gentlemen, January the 14th or not, this has been getting some play in the graveyard. Big game on tap in Gainesville tonight. 13-3 Mizzou versus number 5 Florida. Gators are favored by 10.5 right now. Bet it or forget it. Mark Mitchell stays lights out, and the Tigers stay within single digits, BK.
Okay, I was about to say, are you about to say that they win this game?
I'm not going there.
Covered, maybe. I don't know, man. This is a tough task. Florida's one of the best teams in the country. They're excellent defensively. They also are incredibly efficient on the offensive side of things. They're a very good offensive rebounding team. Missouri's a very bad rebounding team, especially when they go smaller, and they have tough times at times when they try to score, when they've got Gray out there. So I'm going to say forget this. The SEC is unbelievable this year, dude. Missouri has 12 quad 1 games the rest of the way. 12 of them.
Yikes.
If you go 500 in the SEC this year, you're almost guaranteed to get into the SEC tournament. They might get as many as 13 teams into the tournament. That means 3 would be left out. So I'll say forget it. This is a really tough task. They won the 2 games they had to. You probably need to beat Arkansas coming up later on this week on Saturday at home as well. That's one of those games like, if you're going to get to the tournament, you probably got to win that one. This is not on that list. It would be one hell of a win. I will say not betting. I'll forget it.
I'm going to bet it because I think they keep it close. I like the single digits hook there.
I'm going to bet it as well. It was a little closer in the end. It was a little closer in the end on Saturday versus Vanderbilt. And you saw that Jekyll High nature, BK, that we sometimes witness from this team. An unbelievable first half, then that drought in half number 2 before shutting it down, locking it down defensively in the final 2 minutes. So I want to see the supplementary sources more than just Mitchell be able to go off in that environment. I think they can keep it close, though.
Somebody on the text line, by the way, on yours, Alex, from the 636 said it was mentioned in The Athletic earlier this morning that Chicago might have some interest in Saad. So maybe you could do a deal where it's like Taylor Hall for Brandon Saad plus a pick of some kind.
Brandon Saad, obviously Chicago kid, or not Chicago kid, but came through the system in Chicago. So I know that Doug Armstrong has had an interest in Taylor Hall in the past. And what are you looking for? You're looking for a placeholder on that top line that can help your power play. And welcome to Taylor Hall.
All right, 314-399-9646. That's the Your Comfort Service text line for Bet It or Forget It. Let's start out with this from the 314. Bet it or forget it. If the Blues fail to make the playoffs this season, they will trade a core piece or somebody that was previously considered to be a core piece during the offseason.
Bet it. If they miss the playoffs, that's going to be the third straight year of us using the phrase inconsistencies. And now you've got the head coach that you're not bringing in another head coach. You're not blaming the head coach. This is the guy moving forward. That's why I think they brought in Jim Montgomery to figure out what they have. This reminds me a lot of going into that 2018-2019 season when Doug Armstrong basically said, we're not bringing in another coach. When Craig Berube was brought in, this is it. We either get the play from our players or the players are going to be shipped. And we remember what the rumors were that trade deadline before they basically went on that run. Doug Armstrong was calling everybody saying fire sale for our team. So I'm betting this one. Somebody gets moved in the offseason.
Bet it as well. Alex, you couldn't have said it any better. The security is there. The ability to obviously win behind the bench per se. It is going to come down to personnel if once again that drought continues.
Say it. Say it.
So I'm going to do a BK answer.
What's a core member?
What, to that question.
Sorry.
Would Bolduc qualify?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think you're talking guys with contracts.
So you're talking Booch, Thomas, Kyrou, Neighbors,
Parayko, Falk, Bennington.
Man, trading one of those guys would require you to really upgrade from them. I don't think they're just trading Kyrou to get rid of him.
No.
As much as fans maybe want that to be the case, I don't think that's the way that this team will approach it. They're going to trade Kyrou to get Brady Tkachuk, somebody like that. And I only mentioned the name because he's, the hometown kid.
You're making a linear move to go from a star talented player to another star talented player.
Or star to superstar status. And I think it's really hard to make those deals. It's so rare. It's why I said when Matthew Tkachuk became available, this is the move that you go all in for. Mm-hmm. You don't just sit on your hands. You go make this move because it's rare. It's why Vegas gets in on all of these things, man. Because it doesn't come around that often that you get a true superstar talent available.
Well, not just Matthew Tkachuk. How about Sam Reinhart? Sam Reinhart has the most points for the Florida Panthers since he was acquired by the Buffalo Sabres. And he was traded for a first-round draft pick and a goaltender that was in college.
Trade for star players from failing teams.
Yeah.
So those are the kinds of situations that you want to get in. I just don't know who's likely to be available that fits into that criteria. That's why I'm forgetting this.
I would keep an eye on Buffalo. If they seriously move this Dylan Cousins, it reminds me a lot of Sam Reinhart 2.0. Where this is a guy, and this is why I think everybody's saying Buffalo can't do this because they know that they bleeped up when they traded away Sam Reinhart. He's 24 years old. He had a 60-point season a couple of years ago. He's locked up for 8 years at $8 million. And if this is a 6'4" centerman, so that's one that I'd say keep an eye on, but I think after the last time Blues fleeced Buffalo, they're not going to be calling again.
All right, last text here from the 636. Bet it or forget it. The Lions are the only team in the NFC capable of winning the Super Bowl this year.
Oh, forget that. I think the Eagles are capable of it. I just don't believe it. I honestly believe the Washington Commanders are capable of it as well. They have to have a lot of things go their way, but I think they're capable of it.
Tough one to stomach there. I'm going to say actually bet it at the end of the day. And I know I have been optimistic about LA, at least LA's chances to maybe get to the NFC title game here. But as far as explosiveness is concerned, if you have a team with any opportunity, any chance whatsoever to compete with any of the heavyweights from the AFC, it's going to have to be Detroit playing its A game, going up and down the field and just hoping to outscore the opposition because you still don't know. I don't know about the stops that defense can make down the stretch.
Yeah. I don't think the Eagles can beat the Chiefs, the Bills, or the Ravens in the Super Bowl. I just don't think they can. The Lions, the reason why I give them an out on this is because they can score 40 against anybody. On their best day, I mean, we saw it a few weeks ago against the Bills. They can put up 40 points against that defense. So I think I agree with this. I think I'm betting this. The only team from the NFC that I think can win the Super Bowl, not just get there, but win it, I think is the Lions right now. And the crazy thing is, I think I'm not taking them this week against the Commanders, because sometimes in the NCAA tournament, you get there and you're like, hey, this is a really bad matchup for that team. I think the Commanders were the one team that I could see them go up against in the postseason and be like, hey, they can match you point for point. When Jaden Daniels has been in there, we mentioned this stat a few different times over the last few weeks. When Jaden Daniels is playing for the Commanders, points per drive, second in the last 17 years only to the 2007 Patriots. It's one of the best offenses that we've seen in the last 17 years. And that's what the Lions are going to have to stop this weekend. And the Lions defense has been trash for the most part since these injuries have taken place. The one time it looked good was against Sam Darnold and the Vikings 2 weeks ago. And now I'm starting to think that was more about the Vikings than it was about the Lions.
Yeah, if you were the Lions, you really needed the Packers to upset the Eagles.
Totally.
Because that was the ideal matchup for you, taking on that team with not a lot of great wide receivers that can't go toe-to-toe with you. Now you're going up against Washington. And I agree with you. I still think, though, Detroit has the better coach and offense combo compared to the Washington Commanders.
He's Alex. That's Bradford. I'm BK. Coming up in 15 minutes, we'll get to the BK and Ferrario Rewind. And in that segment, we'll give you your chance to score a pair of tickets to see Chris Stapleton. By the way, on Sunday, January 26th, you can check out the Riz Show versus the Fast Lane. That Fast Lane Pick'em Challenge, they are going to announce their Pick'em punishment there. They will perform it live for you while you are out at the Fast Lane and Riz Show's Champ Bash. That's going to be at Hot Shots in Fenton next Sunday, January the 26th. Both shows, their members will be there for the AFC and NFC championship games. Plus, you got some bucket specials, delicious foods, tons of TVs, giveaways throughout the day, and the Pick'em punishment will be performed live on site. Champ Bash kicks off with a live 2-hour pregame show, 11 o'clock on Sunday the 26th. Don't miss it. All the details right now at 101ESPN.com. Coming up next, college football is going through a number of changes, and some of them honestly need to be amended. Coaches are already looking at what the transfer portal should look like in the future. There's one change that's been made in recent years, a consequence from it, that I think could actually be a good thing for college football long term. We'll discuss it next year on 101 ESPN.
Coverage of 101 ESPN is presented by Onder Law Injury Lawyers. GetJim.com. Join the Fast Lane and the Rizzuto Show at Hot Shots Fenton next Sunday, January 26th for Champ Bash. Hang with members of the shows and watch the AFC and NFC championship games. Enjoy bucket specials, delicious food, tons of giveaways, and the Pick'em Challenge punishment being served on site. Our Champ Bash kicks off with a live pregame broadcast, and the fun continues until the NFC and AFC champs are crowned. Don't miss this year's Champ Bash with the Fast Lane and the Rizzuto Show at Hot Shots Fenton. Get more details now at 101ESPN.com.
With Alex Ferrario, I'm Brandon Kiley for our friends over at Circus Sports in the state of Illinois. Alex, I like two different bets that they've got available for us going into this weekend. One is a special that they've got going on right now. Highest scoring team in the divisional round. You know I'm in on the Commanders this weekend. If they win, I think they're going to be the highest scoring team in the divisional round. I think that's going to be the highest scoring game. It has the highest total right now. So at plus 850, I love that bet. If you also want to bet on them on the money line, I've got a parlay ready to go for you, Alex. I know how much you love your parlays.
Give it to me.
3-leg parlay going this weekend in the NFL playoffs. Commanders on the money line, Bills on the money line, Rams plus 6. You parlay those three picks together, bet $10, you're winning $190 over on the Circus Sports app in Illinois.
This is why you need to download it for all your betting leads, the tight money lines, splits, making sure you're bringing in the most money possible. They're not limiting you based off of your winnings, unlike other sports books that do kind of limit where you're going to go with it. And look, with somebody like me, 10, 11, 12-leg parlays, take advantage of those thanks to Circus Sports Illinois. Plus, if you've got issues, you're dealing with actual people, not just robots, Circus Sports Illinois. If you or somebody you know may have a problem with gambling, call 1-800-GAMBLER or text ILGAMB to 833-234.
Take the fast lane home weekdays from 2 to 6 p.m. with Anthony Stalter, Jamie Rivers, and Carrie Davis on 101 ESPN. Two former pros and one average Joe. The fast lane is driven by Scrap Mart Metals Recycling. 101 ESPN Sports Center.
Calgary cruises into Enterprise. Good afternoon. I'm Bradford Bruns. Your Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Tonight at 7, the Blues 4-game homestand resumes versus a rising Flame squad. Jonathan Huberdeau and company winners of their last 3, including yesterday's 5-2 dub over Chicago. STL just fell against Columbus. Among note forwards, Matthew Joseph as well as Alexander Texier return here. NFL Wildcard Edition, Minnesota goes down 27-9. Sean McVay's Rams draw Philadelphia next. Other divisional round battles feature Texans, Chiefs, Commanders, Lions, plus Ravens, Bills. This Sports Center update was driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
They are St. Louis. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN.
All right, Alex, there's a lot to dislike about the current landscape in college football. NIL and the transfer portal, and now guys getting extra eligibility and the eligibility windows for the portal. Like, it's all a mess right now for college football. And there needs to be some legislation that changes that. College football coaches decided today to come together, and they have proposed a a one-time portal around this point in the year that would be 10 days long, and there would be no other opportunities for the kids to enter the portal. This is the one time every year. There would be no spring eligibility. There'd be no fall one. It'd just be right now. You got 10 days to enter it and then find your new home. I don't know if that's the thing that will be the solution or not. I think there's a lot of problems that would present, but that's another conversation for another day. It just shows there are clear problems with the landscape right now in college football. Bo Perbula is a perfect example of this. The former Penn State backup quarterback felt he needed to enter the portal during the fall prior to Penn State's run potentially to the national championship game because he had to find himself a new spot. He had to take advantage of his opportunity that exists with the NIL where you could make a couple $1,000,000 to go somewhere. And if you wait till Penn State is eliminated, well, those spots start to fill up and you end up between a rock and a hard place and potentially stuck back at Penn State and not maximizing your monetary value. So those are all the problems. There are also some positive consequences, in my opinion, of what NIL has become in college football. And I think you can look no further than Carson Beck to see the greatest example of this. Carson Beck was not very good this year for Georgia, and I'm not sure he's ever going to be a great quarterback at the college or NFL level. But Carson Beck is going to get $4 million this year at the University of Miami. If you think that's crazy, totally fair. Maybe you don't think he's deserved it. But Miami believes that he is worthy of that.
Right.
And that's ultimately what matters. The market dictated this. What it also does is it allows Carson Beck to continue to develop at a level that he is ready for. He's not ready for the NFL, man. And in the past, we've seen these guys be failed by their circumstances where Carson Beck in the past just would have declared for the NFL draft. He probably would have been second or a third round draft pick, and he fails immediately in the NFL and never really gets much of a chance to be a starter because he's not capable of being a starter in the league. In the new format, the new era of college football, he transfers to a new place where he will get a fresh start. He makes $4 million, which is basically what he would have had on that first year of a rookie deal anyways, maybe even a little bit more than he would have likely if he was a second or third round pick. So he gets the money. He gets another opportunity to prove himself. And if it ends up going well, he might be a first round pick next year. Who knows? Jaden Daniels wasn't a top 5 pick when he transferred to LSU. He was an afterthought. He was considered to be this guy that had all of this pedigree, and then it failed at Arizona State after a really fun first season. So to me, this is a positive consequence of NIL. I think about Henry Josie, who's not the same situation as Carson Beck, but Henry Josie had a horrific knee injury that felt like it was going to end his college career. And then he came back for one miraculous season in 2013. He still had another year of eligibility at Mizzou, but decided to forego it because he felt, I can't put more miles on my legs. I got to take my chance now while I've got the opportunity before I potentially get hurt again. If Henry Josie had the exact same career, but instead of playing from like 2010 to 2013, he played from 2022 to whenever his eligibility expires, he's not going to the NFL. He went undrafted. He would have come back to Mizzou, got a really nice paycheck from the university, and would have fulfilled his entire eligibility at Mizzou, which would have been a good thing for him and for Mizzou. So I think this is a positive consequence of it. It's one of the few things that I think is positive about it. And I think Carson Beck is just one example of what I think is going to become a growing trend across college football with these guys. Quinn Ewers might be another. Going to another university to continue to develop, get those starts, get those reps before declaring for the NFL draft.
And I think it creates excitement in college football because it creates different narratives going into a new season because it's different in terms of the guy goes to the NFL draft and the team's talking about a new quarterback. No, instead, what are you talking about? You're talking about can Carson Beck resurrect his career this season with the University of Miami? And it creates those storylines. It creates more rivalries if you even get rivalries in college football with different conferences. But then it also creates the next wave of a quarterback for the NFL because typically, like you said, Carson Beck's not even in the conversation of an NFL quarterback. He goes somewhere, he disappears, and you're not talking about him ever. Now you go on and you are one of the best quarterbacks next season on a new team, and now you're talking about a top 10 pick potentially. So I think this creates the storylines, and with the expanded postseason, this is why you get a lot more excitement for college football when you get moves like this.
To me, Bo Nix is the perfect example of this.
That's a really good one.
You guys remember what Bo Nix was at Auburn? He was horrible.
I forgot he was at Auburn.
Legitimately terrible. He was the guy that came in with all this recruiting status. He was like a high 4-star, low 5-star type of a recruit, played as a freshman at Auburn. And in his first 3 seasons at Auburn, it looked like, oh, well, this guy was totally overhyped. It's not going to work at the collegiate level. This is just never going to come together for him. And then he had a really nice senior campaign at Oregon. And he came back for the 5th year at Oregon. And he put up 45 touchdowns and 3 interceptions and was considered to be he was a Heisman finalist, finished top 3 in the voting that year, and then became a first-round pick accordingly. That's exactly what this was supposed to do. It was supposed to allow for opportunities like Bo Nix, where he just starts 100 games. He ended up starting 61 career games at the collegiate level, which is nuts. But I think you saw it this year once he got to the NFL level. Those reps mattered. He had 2,000 career college attempts. Now think about Trey Lance, who had 300 career attempts at the college level, and it clearly affected him once he got to the NFL level. So I think this is going to be a good thing over the long haul. There are a lot of problems with the way that college sports are going right now, but for guys like Carson Beck, for guys like Bo Nix, for guys that previously should have had this kind of an opportunity like a Henry Josie, I think this is one of the positive unintended consequences of the new era in college football. For Alex and Bradford, I'm BK. Coming up next, we're going to give you a chance to score a pair of tickets to see Chris Stapleton live at Hollywood Casino Amphitheater, and we'll hit the BK and Ferrario Rewind here on 101 ESPN.
St. Louis Blues hockey can be heard exclusively on 101 ESPN. Get the info you need before and after every Blues game with a First Community pre- and post-game show.
First Community Credit Union, calling St. Louis home for 90 years and powered by Scott Lee Heating Company.
The choice of a lawyer is an important decision and should not be based solely on advertisements.
If you've been injured in a truck accident, you need the best. Onder Law, voted 2023's best law firm in St. Louis. Our attorneys will hold truck drivers and owners accountable. We stand up to big...
TMA? Then nominate yourself to be the Morning After Listener of the Month. Sign up now at 101ESPN.com or TMASTL.com.
The TMA Listener of the Month Club is quenched by Milagro Tequila. Welcome to a brighter side of tequila with Milagro Tequila.
Giving you the picture, the real big St. Louis sports picture. It's BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. Let's run it back with a daily rewind on BK and Ferrario. Brought to you by Gloria Lou, your home sold guaranteed realty. Selling your home begins at GloriaHasTheBuyers.com.
If you missed anything from today's show, be sure to check out the podcast page. 101ESPN.com and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Schaefer Door Company.
The 101 ESPN app is also presented by Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers. And right now, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. If you are texter number 101 with the correct answer to the question that I'm about to ask you, you will go see Chris Stapleton on Friday, July 11th at Hollywood Casino Amphitheater. Tickets for Chris Stapleton go on sale on Friday morning at 10 o'clock. Text in to win free tickets coming up here in just a second. And you also have an opportunity to win those tickets today on the Fast Lane and every day this week on both BK and Ferrario and the Fast Lane. Here's the question for you. Again, texter number 101 will be getting that pair of tickets to see Chris Stapleton. Earlier today, we talked about our irrational fears. We did so in the junk drawer. What was the movie that Alex referenced that provided many of his biggest irrational fears growing up? What was the movie that Alex referenced? If you have the correct answer to that, your texture number 101, you are getting that free pair of tickets to see Chris Stapleton on July 11th at Hollywood Casino Amphitheater. All right, to hit the rewind today, Alex, we'll finish things out by getting back to where we began, which is reacting to last night's big game in the NFL. Rams end up beating the Minnesota Vikings in the game that took place in Arizona. We both had the Rams last night. T-Bone had the Rams as well. So we saw it going that direction. I did not think it would be as much of an ass-kicking as it was, though. And it made me rethink two things. One, Sam Darnold can't be back to the Vikings next year. Not on the contracts that he's going to be getting, which is projected to be around $150 million.
Yeah, no way.
Two, it makes me rethink what I thought of the Lions' defense coming off of their performance against the Vikings 2 weeks ago. Because now we've seen it in back-to-back weeks where Darnold just imploded. And it makes me think that's more about the Vikings offense than it is about either what we saw last night from the Rams defense or what we saw from the Lions defense 2 weeks ago. Makes me believe even more in the Commanders this weekend. What was your biggest takeaway from last night, Alex?
It was more so the Minnesota Vikings and like how they cannot pay Sam Darnold. The more I watched that game, and that wasn't just a one-off, like the prior one, how big it was against the Detroit Lions, Sam Darnold panicked. And I'm not trying to take anything away from Minnesota because 14 wins is impressive, but a lot of their wins were against bad opponents this season. And Sam Darnold, incredible year. I am not going to pay a quarterback that I don't believe can get me to the next level $40 million a year to handcuff my team as I'm trying to build a winner. I'm going to stick with the guy that I drafted. So I still think the Lions are the best team. I think the Commanders are going to make it interesting. I do agree that they played a very fraudulent team in the Minnesota Vikings, which makes you wonder. But for me, I watched that Minnesota Vikings game and I said, you cannot pay Sam Darnold after this.
All right, last thing that we'll get to, Blues back in action this evening against the Flames, back-to-back against them tonight and then on Thursday as well. Pre-game coverage with Alex begins tonight at 6 o'clock. Both of these games at home. They made a couple of changes to the lineup, Alex. It looks like it's going to be Matthew Joseph and Alexander Texier in, Zach Bolduc and Nathan Walker out. They hope that that helps them add a little bit of a spark and, more importantly, help them on the PK. What is the biggest thing that you're looking for tonight against the Calgary Flames, Alex?
It's going to be consistency in terms of the three periods. You're playing against a Calgary Flames team that, yes, they're riding high, but they're playing a goaltender that's been pulled in 2 of his last 3 starts. So for the Blues, it's going to be what do you look like in the first period, what do you look like in the second, and what do you look like in the third? Because the only way I'm going to believe that this team can actually put a little bit of a run together is if they dominate from start to finish.
This is a game. This is a really 2 games set here, which will determine what Doug Armstrong, in my opinion, will do at the deadline. Because Calgary is the direct team that you are competing against for that final wild card spot. And if you win the next 2 games, you'll be right there with them. Yes, they have a couple of games in hand, but you'll be right there with them in terms of your points. If you lose these 2 games, you're like 7 points behind them, and they've got a couple of games that they have not played that you have. The math just becomes difficult to square pretty quickly if you lose the next 2 games. So to me, forgetting about even what the playoffs mean, it will dictate what Doug Armstrong does at the deadline, which will then influence whether or not you're able to make it to the postseason. So huge games over the next couple of days.
By the way, you better make this team look like they played last night, too. They played Chicago last night. Like, this is the second of back-to-backs where they traveled to St. Louis. You better look like you need to make them look like a team that played last night.
Bradford Bruns did a great job filling in today for Tanner Hendrickson. That is Alex Ferrario. You'll hear him again coming up at 6 o'clock for the pregame coverage for Blues versus Flames. I'm Brandon Kiley. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow at 11 a.m., breaking everything down from this game against the Flames. The Fast Lane's coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
Tune in this Friday from 11 to 2 as BK and Ferrario broadcast live from the E&B Granite Studios at the Centene Community Ice Center. E&B Granite, Bernie Federko's only choice for granite countertops, cabinets, and flooring.